All right, welcome back to another edition of the Bebo Knows podcast. This is your host, Brian Bullock. Happy New Year to you all. This is the NFL playoff preview and also the regular season review podcast. And with me, as always, is Mr. Seth Byrne. Welcome back, Seth.
Thank you. Happy to be here, and Happy New Year, Mr. Bullock.
Yes, yes, thank you. And it's always nice to get together, talk about football. I am always excited this time of the year, except the fact that there's only 13 playoff games left until the season's
Well,
over.
here's the thing. The real question is how many of them will the 49ers be playing in?
I hope three of them.
Yep.
and I hope their win percentage is 1,000, but we will.
I could certainly live with that.
We will certainly see how that goes. But
Yep.
I am happy to be here, and I believe we began this podcast last year the same way, but I wanted to do it again the same way this year. Just I like to get a lessons learned from the current year that's going on, either from like a betting or football analytical point of view. So let's just start with that. So as far as this current season has gone, what are some things that you learned either from a betting perspective or from just watching football from an analytical perspective? What can you tell us about this current season?
From the analytical perspective, and this really came on later in the season, and as I wrote in the notes here, if you watch every snap of Myles Garrett or TJ Watt, it was difficult not to come away with the sense that the NFL has legalized holding. It's kind of as if the NFL saw a ton of quarterbacks go down and decided they had enough of backup quarterbacks deciding games. And if you watch the NFL anytime in your lifetime, you've always seen plenty of uncalled holds. But it felt like to me that the NFL got a bit more aggressive about letting it go this year. And so what I did was I checked the numbers. From 2015 through 2019, we had a rough average of 3.3 holding calls per game. Then in 2020, in the COVID season, it dropped to 2.11, which is kind of understandable. And then it bounced back to 2.88 holding calls per game in 21, 2.66 in 22, and it's down to 2.56 this year. Now, we have been at that kind of level previously. If you go back to 2013, that was a low ebb year, and go back as far as 2009, it was even slightly lower, 2.44. But what that doesn't tell us is how many holds were being committed per game relative to the number that were called. Kind of like Georgetown basketball will commit 5 fouls on a single play. You're not going to be able to call more than one of them.
Sure.
So my sense was that there was more holding this year, and particularly more holding against elite edge rushers, which we'll come back to perhaps a little later. But that was one of my feelings from the year. The other thing that struck me was that Miami built an offensive juggernaut. They dropped 70 on Denver. They dropped 45 on Washington. Thank you for correcting me on that,
No
by
problem.
the way. And you kind of would expect that dominant offense to also do a better job against Buffalo, Kansas City, Philadelphia, and Dallas. And they really, for the most part, did not against elite competition. That was a lot to me. I mean, they built their offense around speed. And while Dallas has built their defense around speed, that might have been kind of a tricky matchup. In general, I would have felt like they would have done a little better overall against good competition. And then we have San Francisco. They built an awesome offense just by having elite skill players at pretty much every position, tight end, running back, wide receivers, an awesome coach, Shanahan, and Mr. Irrelevant. But at least Mr. Irrelevant is doing what he's told, and he's doing so on time with a decent level of accuracy. You can do a lot with a quarterback who throws it where and when you want him to. And that's been happening in San Francisco. And as for back to Miami for a second, they're now unfortunately a shell of themselves with injuries on both sides of the ball. And amazingly enough, Tua is reasonably healthy, and it's the rest of the offense and defense that got wrecked. So I guess those are the things that stuck to me after this.
Okay.
Season.
And we of course we have to bring up the the year of the backup quarterback because this feels like
Okay.
I don't have numbers to support it, but this just feels like an I know there's injuries every year, but this seems like even a more of an anomaly than normal. It seemed like that there were more teams that had like 3 or 4 starting quarterbacks than I can ever remember.
So that's probably accurate. Like I don't have any numbers on this, but my sense is that this was more um, catastrophic for the average starter than most years were.
Yeah.
Um, and one of the things I'm looking at is just taking a quick look at the 2021 NFL draft. So we have Trevor Lawrence go 1. He stays healthy and mostly healthy and misses the playoffs. Number 2, you mentioned backups coming in. The number 2 overall pick was a backup who got to play when Aaron Rodgers got hurt in New York, and that was a disaster.
Oh man.
And number 3, Trey Lance is the only one who actually made the playoffs, but not on the team that drafted him, on the team he was traded to. So first of all, we have a situation where the top 3 picks overall from a recent draft just didn't make much of an impact, and certainly aren't expected to make much of the impact on the NFL playoffs this year. And then you have a lot of the other starters, just a ton of mid-level stars went down, and I don't know what I would even call Aaron Rodgers at this point, but he went down, and Herbert went down, and a bunch of other starters went down, and others just lost their jobs, like Russell Wilson. So yeah, we saw a shitload of starts from backup quarterbacks this year, and it's and we'll get to this a little later, but I feel like it's one of the reasons scoring was down.
Okay. So yeah, that was actually the part of the next question. So I wanted to. So I'm incorporating some listener questions.
Mhm.
You were able to foster a bunch of uh, listener questions from your post from last week. So I kind of
Yeah,
sprinkled them into the outline as
sure.
needed. So this one kind of ties into kind of mixes a couple of topics here together. But so yeah, you just kind of teased in terms of the drop in offense and how much of that really had to do with the QB injury bug. The question from Justin Zovis was about why scoring was down. So, like, how much would you attribute to the quarterback injury bug, and how much would you contribute it to other factors?
So let's start off with the fact that early in the season, like we got the sense that scoring was going to be down, I think pretty early, and this was before all the carnage. Although
Yeah, yeah,
obviously the Jets' carnage was 4 plays in on offense, but
yeah, yeah. I think it was like late, at least 3 or 4 weeks in, like without all the injuries. I feel like it was already down, if I
yeah,
remember right.
that's my recollection as well. And early in the season, people were talking about the cover 2 and how defenses were playing both safeties back. You weren't seeing a box safety. You were seeing both safeties playing kind of the free roll in coverage, trying to take away deeper balls, and defenses were trying to limit big plays. And so offenses were going to have to grind the ball down the field, matriculate the ball down the field, and that they had trouble doing that. And so you were seeing more drives get maybe a first down or 2 first downs than punt. And there's nothing more underrific than an offense getting a couple first downs and then punting. Like a 3 and out is better for the over than a couple first downs and a punt.
Hmm.
So, yeah, we saw scoring be down a little bit because of just conservatism on defense. And then the other thing that I noticed, and this kind of thing that kind of struck me early, was it feels like we've seen more defensive talent come into the league on the defensive line over the last few years than we have on the offensive line. So it felt like, in general, defenses were stronger in the trenches than offenses were, which is another thing that somewhat limits offensive production. And then finally, yes, there was a ton of quarterbacks going down. Although one of the things that, like, I don't know if you feel this way as well, it felt like the elite quarterbacks, they might have gotten dinged up, like Allen in Buffalo, his shoulder and stuff, but and Jalen Hurts with his knee and now his finger, I think. Um, the really good quarterbacks, the elites stayed on the field, and I know it feels a little weird calling Hurts an elite, but um, for the most part, like Dak was healthy, Purdy was mostly healthy. Like I felt like most of the really good quarterbacks stayed healthy. I know Stroud missed some time with concussion issues, but it felt like it was the next tier of quarterbacks down that just kept going down. And I don't know if you felt that way as
Yeah,
well.
I had to. I didn't really think about the actual quarterbacks that did stay healthy, but even the even the ones that did stay healthy, like I know Mahomes had a down year, and I don't know how much of that has to do with his surrounding cast. That obviously he didn't really get much help from a lot of his receivers outside of maybe Rice towards the end of the year, but um, it felt like just looking at the numbers from what I remember that they're just down in general. Like the stats don't even pop out as much, and you would think that with that I was thinking with that extra game we were going to see like records just being
Yeah,
destroyed.
that's a reasonable
Uh,
presumption. It just didn't seem to work out that way.
so yeah, I mean, and I guess part of that too could just be I don't know if teams are, you know, I haven't really tracked to see if anyone in the NFL is doing anything like the NBA where they're doing like load management. I mean, I know they don't really have as many
Sure.
games to play with, so it's not like I mean you could rest guys at the end of games. But that's pretty much it. It's not like you're going to give a guy a week off unless it's the last week of the season. It doesn't mean anything, but.
I
But yeah,
mean, we see load management on defense, like keeping edge rushers fresh and trying to rotate the defensive line a bit. I don't know we see it as much on offense, which is where the stats would be accumulated. I know like wide receivers will come out and take some plays off after rushing down the field and stuff, they'll fly route or whatever else. But I don't think load management, the way we think of it in the NBA, has really come to the NFL, particularly on the offensive side of the ball.
yeah, and like I said, I don't know if even if you keep adding games, I don't really know. Like, there's not enough games in the NFL for teams to like have the luxury of just sitting a guy that's healthy, if like a good healthy guy, unless it's like the last week of the year and it doesn't mean
Yeah,
anything. So,
that's my sense as well.
so okay, so as far as other significant uh, uh, points from the 2023 season, what else stood out to you from the
So
current
in my
season?
lifetime, there are three teams that I recall seeing in the regular season that were on another level. The 85 Bears, the 91 Redskins, and the 2007 Patriots. There were other teams that were very, very good, like the 84 49ers and Dolphins were kind of cool to watch. And there were other teams that went 15-1 and such. But those three teams were just, they felt different. And of them, two of them won the Super Bowl, and the other one ran out of gas against the Giants. Thank goodness. Um, so this year we have two really, really strong teams. The Baltimore Ravens barely trailed. They set possibly some records for fewest amount of snaps or minutes trailing, whatever else. At least heading into week 17, or sorry, week 18, which didn't count for them. So who cares about what happened to the Steelers there? But they were amazing. And the 49ers, when healthy, they were absurd. They lost three games in the middle of the season when they didn't have their full complement of weapons. But otherwise, they were dominant until they faced the Ravens, at which point Purdy kind of got unmasked a little bit. The Shanahan magic didn't quite work, and that defense could take away a lot of things that they were trying to do. And obviously, there was also some bad luck, some tipped balls, were intercepted, whatever else. But not just on talent level, just for a variety of reasons. That is the one team, obviously, the 49ers don't want to face in the playoffs. But they're also the best team in the AFC. Obviously, that's one team they wouldn't want to face. It's one team they'd have to face on a neutral field. Um, that beat them in San Francisco. They lost to the Browns as well on the last second field goal, and that's one of the toughest defenses they'd have to go against. But I also think if they could choose between facing Flack or rolling the dice, I think they would choose to face Flacco.
Sure. Yeah. Yeah. That Flacco magic from 10 years ago. Like, is it? Is it?
I mean, if Flacco were to beat the 49ers in another, actually, no, Flacco didn't beat the 49ers. Flacco beat the Giants. Oh, wait, no,
No, no,
Flacco did.
no. No,
Yes, it was Flacco.
yeah, he did.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yep. So Flacco beating the 49ers again, time is a flat circle for
Yeah,
me. But
yeah,
yeah, Flacco beating the 49ers again would be one hell of a story.
yeah. I almost got into a fight that night. I'm not a fighting. I'm not a fighting person, but I had some friends egging me on at that Super Bowl party, and that.
Yeah, that
So,
I totally understand. That one must have hurt.
so I don't know.
Um,
Like a brief aside, but ever since that day, I said if the Niners ever make the Super Bowl, I'm watching the Super Bowl at home by myself, so I'm not being baited and um, tormented by my friends
I'm willing to
giving
bet
me crap.
money that alcohol was involved.
Oh, it was for sure, but I also know myself, and you have to know yourself, and I'm not gonna put myself in that position again. So um,
Okay.
okay, so all right, so yeah, the next one here. So at this time last year, I think Brock Purdy had about like 6 games under his belt, maybe I don't know, 5 or 6,
He
something like that,
started
maybe.
basically
Um,
undefeated to start his
yeah.
career for a
So
while.
yeah. So so he was still kind of an unknown. I still had my doubts just because you know, I wanted to see a little bit more of him. I think everyone did. But after a full year of seeing him, getting a chance to see him against, a full slate of opponents, how do you feel? How do you evaluate him compared to last year?
So I think that just on some level he has to be better than he was last year, simply because he now has more experience. Um, I do think that watching him on film this year, it's like last year he came in, did what Shanahan told him, and things worked out. This year he's had to make a few adjustments as defenses tried to take things away. And apart from the game against the Ravens, like I felt like he's done a pretty good job. Yes, there was the losing streak, and the offense did not look great in the middle of the season when he didn't have all his weapons. It's possible that if someone were to get hurt again, that could repeat itself. But for the most part, I feel like Purdy has continued to develop, and I now think that he's a solid quarterback.
Okay,
I can understand the fact that like he was in the MVP race for a little while, and then that went away with the game against the Ravens. But like his numbers are amazing. It's just that the context is, well, he's surrounded by an all-star team and he's got Shanahan a head coach. Like a quarterback should have amazing numbers in those contexts, in that
sure.
context.
Makes sense.
Oh,
And so this makes this question a little harder because so last year when we did this podcast, there was a listener question. I think it was from Rick Chatham 3 about
sure.
where you would have Purdy drafted if if there was a redraft. And I think you maybe said the third round, but no, it doesn't come with Shanahan. Or
Right.
it might not come with Shanahan. So like you know but so that's kind of why this next question was
Purdy is now a first-round draft pick.
okay.
Under the presumption that if you give him at least a competent coach around him, he'll be a capable game manager. Like he's one of those guys that you don't necessarily have to take him in the top 10, whatever else. But if you give him a decent offense to run, he can do so.
Okay.
Um,
So how would you?
and it just happens that he's running the best offense he could be surrounded by.
So yeah. So how do you? So like like I guess you could say this about Purdy and Shanahan or any combination that works, but like how do you separate evaluation of quarterback from coach or this specific quarterback?
It's difficult. I mean, we had this thing with Brady and Belichick
Yeah.
where it was very hard to separate their success. And then they really did separate. And Brady won a Super Bowl in Tampa Bay, and Belichick didn't do shit.
Yeah.
So, like, point for Brady. And I don't remember who said this, but it's hard to find a coach in the Hall of Fame who didn't have a quarterback in the Hall of Fame. So like having good quarterback play is very important to coaching success.
Yeah.
And like Shanahan obviously succeeded in Atlanta with Matt Ryan. That was Ryan's one awesome season. And Shanahan has continued to produce success in San Francisco. He did it with Jimmy Garoppolo, and now he's doing it with Brock Purdy. But I don't feel like Purdy is entirely a bystander here. I think what we've seen from Purdy, like the accuracy in particular, is he's been a good quarterback. And you watch the 49ers games. Like, how do you feel when he's in, and how do you feel if there was Sam Darnold who's coming in there?
Well, I thought entering this year that if Purdy got hurt, I've seen enough of the Niners in the past handful of years where I wasn't as nervous if we had to go to the backup, only because of the surrounding cast. And
Mhm.
even though it was Darnold, Darnold didn't. If I don't have the numbers in front of me, and I know I can look them up, but I feel like Darnold did a little better last year. Or was it? Or yeah, it was last year. Was it last year when he was on a? Yeah, he was on a different team last year.
He was
Starting
with the
Carolina.
Carolina Panthers,
Carolina.
and he
Yeah.
actually, I think, had his best season.
So yeah, he was okay, and I would have been okay with. I was okay with him as a backup, but I don't like having watched Purdy over the course of the year. It's
I
hard
hear you right now.
to yeah, it's hard to ignore the numbers that we see, and what we see on tape. So
Mhm.
yeah, I don't think I don't remember. I already lost track of your question, but as far as
So it's just a matter of it. Let's just
yeah,
say that for some reason, Shanahan Rue announced that Darnold is going to start, and that we'll only see Purdy if Darnold gets hurt. Like, how would you feel? Like,
I mean, knowing what we know now, I would be disappointed. If it was the start of the year where I was still unsure, a little bit unsure about Purdy, I would have maybe been a little better with it. But I mean, I do think they made the right choice, even when the season started, that going with Purdy. Although I still thought I was still kind of in the Lance camp, but I was like, well, I guess they see more of things than we do. So, I just had this, I had to realize that like there's probably stuff that Lance is doing in practice that, doesn't really, that they're noticing that is a big red flag, that and that the fact that he only went for a third round pick, being the number 3 pick a couple of years ago, tells me that that there's something wrong with him. So
well, the 49ers wanting to move on from him is obviously not a good sign.
Yeah. But
And it's true. I wanted it to be one way with Lance as well. I wanted him to be an elite offensive player in the NFL. Hasn't worked out yet, but who knows? Maybe he'll get the last laugh.
yeah.
Maybe he'll come in. Maybe Dak will get hurt and he'll beat you in the playoffs.
Oh God. It's not. But although I guess Cooper Rush is still the backup there, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, that's true. But you know what? Let's say both of them go down. Shit happens.
I guess you could have a NFC Championship game like last year where that happens. But but yeah, as far as Purdy goes, yeah, I wouldn't want. Knowing what we know now, I wouldn't want Darnold to start, but I wouldn't feel the worst. I still think we would be favorites over most of the NFC with Darnold as the
I think you'd definitely still be the NFC favorites. My sense is, though, that you'd go from being favorites over the field to just being favorites.
Yeah. So, okay. Yeah. So, do you think? So, I guess you kind of answered this question, but do you think? Yeah. So, Purdy would be a viable quarterback with a league average coach. I mean, the fact that you said you draft him in the first round kind of tells me the answer to
at this point, yes. I feel like we've seen enough from him that, like, what we saw in college wasn't the best of him. And what we've seen in the NFL is that he's not just capable of leading an NFL offense, he's capable of leading a really, really, really good NFL offense and not screwing things up. Like, that's the thing. A lot of quarterbacks just screw things up one way or another. They make bad decisions, or they just can't play fast enough, or they aren't accurate enough, or whatever the case may be. And Purdy hasn't done that. He hasn't been the reason the 49ers couldn't win. So, again, the Ravens game accepted, where, by the way, Darnold came in and played reasonably well as the backup, but that was after the game was kind of already lost.
that. All right. So the next part here, and I guess I when I asked these questions here, for some reason I thought maybe you had more of a distaste for the NFC East opponents, from your Giants,
No,
but
like I mean,
um,
even at my worst, like in my day, first of all, I'm more of a Jets fan, even though I am a Giants fan. But like, you hate the Cowboys because of their arrogance, and you hate the Redskins because of Snyder, or perhaps for some other reasons, like you didn't like the Hogs or whatever else. But like, it's more I hate Philadelphia than I hate the Eagles.
okay,
It's it's not so much the team itself; it's everything Philadelphia itself. Um, but like. No, I don't hate the Eagles, and I particularly don't enjoy watching my futures go up in smoke. Boom, like that's money gone. Like it's not gone yet, obviously. They're still technically in the NFL playoffs, they're in the tournament, but like
it's not looking good.
but what can you do? That's why they call it gambling.
Yeah. So yeah, my question was, well, like, how enjoyable this is for you, because like I said, I was
Not
thinking,
not not
but the fact that you have a financial stake in it, yeah, obviously is not enjoyable.
were winning, but winning ugly. And I was like, all right, just grab that number one seed. And then they got boat raced at home by the 49ers. I was like, all right, you still have a half game lead over them. And the 49ers, I think, had one really tough game left against the Ravens. The Eagles had a tough game left against the Seahawks, and there might have been some others, but like the Eagles just completely fell apart. It was a moot point by the end, and they couldn't even hold on to the NFC East.
Yeah.
So that's how football goes, though, sometimes. Like, you can't, you don't bring one season's success into the next season. Every season is its own season. You got to start from scratch, 0-0, and just keep winning. Like the 49ers with Walsh and Parcells in New York, they both talked about that. Like one season's success is one season's success. It does not follow through. And so like the Eagles at 10-1, yeah, they had a great record. They were not exactly impressive, and then things fell apart. So
Yeah, it wasn't quite like the Vikings last year, where the Vikings were winning by one score, but the Eagles were kind of like skating by at the end of games, like just squeaking by is what I meant to say. Um, where it didn't feel like that they were like a 10-1 team, and I guess the record ended up kind of correcting itself a little bit at the end.
and yet they went 10-1, including a 3-game winning streak over the Cowboys, the Chiefs, and the Bills.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
I know that two of those games were at home, I think, against the Cowboys and Bills, but like that's still an impressive run.
yeah.
Like
Nothing to
there was
sneeze
hope.
at. Nothing to sneeze
No,
at. So,
yeah.
so I mean, if they could channel their midseason swing there, there's still a chance, but it's not looking
I
good.
mean, there's still a chance, but it's gonna have to involve winning, or at least almost certainly gonna have to involve winning a road game against Dallas and San Francisco, and then probably following that up with a game against the other. And
Yeah,
that is a tough freaking path. It's Super
yeah,
Bowl.
yep,
Good
yep,
luck.
yep. So what? So yeah, what did you notice with them? Because there was a couple listener questions about the what's going on with the Eagles.
Yeah, so
Um,
there's been a few things. Let's start on the offense. I mean, I was getting DMs early in the season asking, "Hey, are you concerned about the Eagles' offense?" And early in the season, I really wasn't. Early in the season, like they're winning. Don't worry about a little bit of variance, whatever else. Like they should be able to handle things. But then, like the concerns continued, and people started calling the offense predictable, which is somewhat tricky to measure. Like I grew up with the '86 Giants, who ran or worked their offense out of four different sets and not so many plays with each. It was itself a predictable offense, but good luck stopping it. And I was hoping that that's how things would work out with the Eagles. This is what we do. Good luck against it. Um, and while they were 10-1, their offense was significantly worse than it was last season. I think it was zero point 0.7 yards worse per play on passing plays and zero point 0.3 yards worse per play on running plays. That's a significant drop off. Um, And it could be from predictability, could be from injuries. I'm not entirely sure what it was, but like I do get the sense that Hurts has been playing with a knee injury for most playing through a knee injury for most of the season. Like he can certainly do the tush push. But for the most part, like it felt like they were not the same offense, and eventually they kind of collapsed. Now, defensively, last season they had a ton of sacks. I think they were threatening some of the old records. And this season, they were not able to replicate that. And that's, by the way, with the addition of Jalen Carter on the inside, who did a great job in the interior defense. And the pass rush wasn't the same, and the back seven was exposed. The 49ers game is obviously the best example, but they simply did not have the same level of speed to keep up with the opposition. They were toast. And I know they made one signing to try and fix that, but at that point, like it's a little late. And then they switched defensive coordinators. And as I wrote in our little outline, when Matt Patricia is the answer, I no longer understand the question. And it clearly has not worked out for them. Things went from bad to much, much worse. And so it's hard to feel a lot of confidence in the Eagles right now, save for the fact they're playing the one team left in the playoffs, who I view as clearly worse than them. They get the best draw that possible, at least for the first round in Tampa Bay. But I think after that, it's going to be very, very hard for them.
Okay. So do you agree with the market? I think it was on Monday. I don't know if it's changed since then, but I was looking at Pinnacle on Monday and saw that the Eagles were slightly above Detroit for the third best odds for that.
I think they still are slightly above Detroit in general, and no, I do not agree with the market on that.
Okay.
I have Detroit as the third most likely NFC team to A, make the Super Bowl, and B, win the Super Bowl.
Okay.
I view Detroit as a better team than Philadelphia, and I view them as having an easier path since they don't have to face San Francisco until the NFC Championship game.
Yep. Okay. All right. And then the next thing here was about fourth downs, just being teams being more aggressive. I guess, and I didn't mention this part in the outline, but I should have. In terms of being aggressive, in addition to teams going for it more on fourth down, I was really impressed with teams actually going for 2 points more, even in like, especially in the spots where they were down by 14 late and they'd score a touchdown. We saw a lot more teams doing that. I don't have the numbers, but I just know, just based on the scoring changes that we'd see, teams going from being down 14 to down 6, late in the game, and be like, oh wow, some of these teams are actually like figuring it out. So like, what do you get? Do you get the sense that this is the trend that we're going to keep seeing going forward?
First of all, to answer your question, yes. Second of all, I just want to lay out the 14 thing.
Okay.
The reason teams should go for 2 when they score a touchdown from being down 14 to going down 8 is if you get the 2-point conversion, then the next touchdown wins for you with a made extra point. If you fail in the 2-point conversion, then you get to go for 2 again, which is where their edge comes from, and send the game to overtime and succeed another time. And the real issue, the question is, are you more likely to make a 2-point conversion or fail in 2-point conversions? And under like the current stats, it's clearly more likely that you'll succeed once than fail twice in a row. And so it's a huge edge in that situation to go for 2 when you're down 8 in that situation. And that's why it was really weird recently. You saw Vrabel got fired. And one of the reasons he got fired was the analytics staff wasn't necessarily happy with all of his decisions. And one of the things they mentioned was him going for 2 down late in that situation. The game they ended up winning by a point. And I saw that, and I did a double take. I was like, really? This is what your analytics staff is saying? You might need better analytics people on your roster. Like, Not good, Tennessee. Not good. Um, and so, yeah. And now to the fourth down stuff. Yes, we have seen teams and coaches going for a lot more on fourth down because the nerds were right. Like, this is win percentage that you're leaving on the field if you don't. And it's a lot correct to go for it in fourth and short in a lot of situations. And we've seen teams start to pick up some of that free money, some of that free expected win percentage that they were leaving on the ground in years past.
Yeah, because I so doing like a cross sport comparison. So like the one sport that when it comes to analytics that I feel like has probably maxed out, or at least right now has maxed things out, or I don't know, I could be wrong. I'm speaking from a kind of a place of ignorance, but like the NBA, like if you look at like the NBA shot chart, like all the shots are either at the 3-point line or in the paint. Like that's the most common shot, and that's
That's what the teams are going for, and that's what defenses are trying to take away.
And that's like that's kind of what the logic is dictated that's what should be done, and so like every team's shot chart is basically the same now. Like we probably still have some NFL teams that aren't making those same decisions. So like maybe their decision chart is a little different than another team's decision chart, like the Lions, where the Lions will go for it more than the average team. I think they went for it like 40 something times on fourth down. So
as I wrote in the notes, like, yes, coaches have gotten better, but they're still still a little bit too conservative. And then I added it in parentheses, Dan Campbell accepted. Like,
yeah,
he is definitely not too conservative.
and
like,
and I think we've discussed this before too, but and you were the one who kind of drove this point across, but it really comes down to whether you have the support of your ownership with those type of decisions, whether you could live with the results of those decisions.
On that, ownership in general has gotten smarter on the subject, which is good.
So yeah, I feel like that's where you need the backing before you could actually make those decisions quite a bit. I mean, you could always make those decisions in spite of ownership, but then you won't have a job for very long. So so that's kind of why I think maybe teams are coaches are making those decisions a little bit more because because owners are maybe getting the insight from other people saying, hey, these are decisions that over the long term are smart decisions, and then they kind of just buy into it a little bit more than they used to. So that's at least the impression that I'm getting.
I just want to go back to Detroit for 1 second.
Sure.
I realize there's one bit of my notes I left out. In terms of who's the third best expected chance to make it to the Super Bowl out of the NFC, obviously San Francisco's number one, Dallas number two. The Eagles are going to have to play on a short week because they have the Monday Night Football game. No matter what, I hope they're playing on Sunday the following week, at least get 6 days of rest. But they're guaranteed to have a short week, which is one disadvantage they face. And one other thing is this Lions team, in addition to having a coach that's very aggressive and having the team buy in, they're not luck boxes the same way Minnesota was last year. This is an actual real team that like they don't necessarily need to get lucky in one way or another to beat their opposition. Goff has been solid. Their team is solid. And while they do have a tough matchup, and obviously we'll talk about the matchups more later, like this Detroit team is the dark horse of the NFC to me.
Okay. Yeah, and like you said, they have one guaranteed home game. If there's another upset somewhere, they can maybe get another one. But yeah, we'll see. Okay, so
We shall see.
So yeah, there was I think one other note you had we're gonna bring up with the aggressiveness or the next frontier of analytics with clock management. You were talking about.
Let's talk about that because that's one of the things where the Patriots were notorious for trying to have the last drive of the first half, just in terms of making sure that you get that extra possession. And particularly in the fourth quarter, the clock is a shared resource. And it's one of those things where teams have struggled with using timeouts early, which can end up leading your opponent to have time to strike back if you score. And it's whenever you're dealing with a shared resource, it is kind of tricky. Um, and so clock management is one of those areas where I think we're going to see a decade from now timeout usage to be different. I expect there to be some advances in this frontier as teams study how much time they should be using late in the game and whether or not in some cases it's better to risk failing early and then getting another chance back at the ball, even if your drive fails. You may have seen the onside kick in the Cardinals Eagles game after I think the Cardinals had tied it.
Yeah.
And then they did an onside kick. And one of the reasons they did that onside kick was, well, I mean, if we don't recover it, and obviously we probably won't, it'll be hard for the Eagles to run the clock for the last drive. So even if they score, we'll have time to counter.
Yep.
And that's what happened. The Eagles got a field goal, and then the Cardinals got a touchdown and beat them. And kudos to them for having the balls to take that risk. But yeah, like clock managing the end of the game, making sure you have that last drive where you can use all 4 downs is a huge edge. Having a drive where you have all 4 downs is a superpower in the NFL.
Yeah.
And I think teams will be smarter about trying to prevent that and also trying to make it happen on their end.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking to myself with certain times where I've seen a game where say like a team is down by like, between like 4 and 6 or something like that, with like a minute left, and the other team has like, like 1 or 2 timeouts, and like, is there any advantage to like the first play taking a knee so that they're forced to use a timeout only to like make sure that you can like burn that rest of the clock? Like, is that like, I'm like, I don't know.
It is theoretically possible that there are situations where even when trailing, it's worth giving up downs to run clock and prevent a counter strike.
Yeah, I would think you'd have to be pretty deep in the opponent territory to feel comfortable with something like that. But I'm just wondering if that's something that some crazy scenario where we might see that in the future, where just to get a team to burn its last timeout or two.
Well, we might, and if it works out with the team not scoring, running out of downs, the talking heads are going to kill them, even if they were correct.
Yeah. So, that's one thing I'll be interested to see if that happens in the next 5 or 10 years. So, okay, the next one here was Black Monday / coaches.
This has been the blackest Monday or blackest week of, I think, of our lifetimes.
Yeah.
Like,
and not only in NFL, but bringing in college with Saban retiring is kind of a big shocker.
Yeah, we've seen Saban, we've seen Carroll, and of course, we've seen the largest of all the dominoes, Bill Belichick, all leave their jobs. Now, Belichick wants a new job, and we're going to have to wait and see where he goes. But, like, yeah, this has been a huge week, and with Vrabel as well. I would have expected them to try and see if they get some value for him. But apparently teams have decided they're less interested in trading coaches they don't want anymore and just pushing them out.
Okay. So in terms of...
I do TV for a year while he still draws an NFL paycheck. Who the hell knows?
Yeah. So when as far as like your stance on this goes, how long do you think is a fair tenure to properly assess a coach? Because I know there's times where it's fairly obvious, but there's times where it's like is an extra year really gonna make up my mind on this guy?
My sense is you get a little bit of a feel early. Like if a guy just clearly didn't have like Urban Meyer or Matt Patricia, there's going to be warning signs very, very fast. Like Patricia lost the locker room very quickly. Same with Meyer. And in other cases, you can know in a couple years, a guy might not be terrible, but might not be as good as you wanted either. There are situations where a guy is at, and you have to decide whether or not you want to live with that, or if you want to fire him, still pay out his contract, and hire a new guy. That's a decision for ownership. It's a cost-benefit analysis, I suppose. But my feeling is within 2 to 3 years, you get a sense of how this guy will be in the job. However, we've seen teams like the Steelers have coaches not necessarily be successful early, but stick with them, develop them, build them up. And it's possible that's the kind of thing that should be done more often, given how hard it is to jump from being a head coach, how much more responsibility you have, and how your job requirements change. But I don't foresee coaches getting more time in the future. So you better impress in the first few 2 to 3 years. And there's, by the way, multiple ways a coach can impress. You can be a tactician where on the offensive or defensive side of the ball, you give your team an edge. Like we've seen Shanahan and McVay on offense. D'Amico Ryans actually, I thought, did a pretty good job in Houston on defense, getting an average defense out of, in my at least personal opinion, below average overall talent. So like you can make an impression that way. Dan Campbell made an impression by just winning over his locker room with his attitude, his aggressiveness, his nature. He got his team to play really hard for him, and they still haven't. They won the division for the first time in years. And I feel like he's a very good coach just by getting his team ready to play football. Football is hard. Football is painful. And like it's one thing to get your team ready to play, but I get the sense he also gets his team to practice hard too, which is no easy feat. And so like I like Campbell a lot. And so if a coach is making an impact in one way or another, I feel like you can see that and say, okay, we have something here. Now, on the other hand, there are certain coaches who get micromanaged by either the general managers or his quarterback, or in the case of the Jets, it's the same guy. So like Aaron Rodgers is running that team, and it's a fucking disaster. And you just see the expressions on Sal's face when we look him on the sideline, just like, what am I doing with my life? So I don't know, man. I feel like you can know reasonably quickly just to answer the question.
Okay. So there was a couple of similar questions kind of back to back here. I'll just read them both at the same time, and you could just kind of address each as you wish. But the Trevor Britton was asking about insight on NFL coaching rankings and if you think Belichick can regain NFL success. And then the other one was from Cliff Ritter 101 about how many points certain coaches are worth, if you believe that's a thing. So however you like, you could just kind of go into both questions if you want.
So let's talk about another coach, Mike McDaniel in Miami.
Okay.
He's another coach who clearly made an impact on the offense. Like they built the speed kills philosophy, and they've made it work for them. And like I feel like he's a good coach. And my sense is, if Miami were offered a first round pick for him, so let's say a mid first round pick, something in the teens, they would turn it down. And so I haven't necessarily quantified coaches on a points per game thing, because I do it more holistically. I look at the teams, players, break it down that way. I don't break down coaches individually, because like a coach is generally not going to get subbed out for his backup for any place.
Sure.
Like they're just there. And so I haven't quantified them specifically, but like there are clearly coaches that matter, and they'd be worth a draft haul. And like McDaniel, Shanahan, McVay. One of the things I wrote here is Andy Reid would be in that group as well, except for what John Madden mentioned. There are old guys and there are fat guys, but there aren't a lot of old fat guys. And as much as I love Andy Reid, I think he's great. Like he's 65 years old and he loves his cheeseburgers. So
yeah, that's not wrong. I was actually going to ask, like, this might be a question for another podcast, because this would probably take a little bit more time to think out. But an idea for a future podcast would be like ranking the quarterbacks and coaches simultaneously in terms of like their point value, and at what point, like how early in the list you get to the coach, like the first coach in the list, like, you know, ranking.
Wow. Let's actually just try to go in blind on this one, and let's think about it for a second. Like, obviously, we're taking Mahomes above anybody. It's not even close.
Yeah.
And after that, I'm taking Allen. Variance in all.
Yeah.
Like, but after that, do I want Shanahan? Like,
as a coach,
like Dak and Shanahan or Purdy, obviously.
Yeah, like if you're drafting quarterbacks and coaches for your team, like yeah, like is there's going to be a coach in the top five, I would say, right? Like,
I think there has to be. Like,
yeah,
I don't think there's five, and obviously quarterbacks matter a ton. We both know this, but are we not taking Shanahan above like the fifth quarterback?
yeah, I don't know. I it got to mean something because like when you think about where what Shanahan's done with like Garoppolo, um,
Yeah,
and
like
like
having
Purdy.
Shanahan. Like one of the reasons that Purdy gets so discounted is because Shanahan is there.
Yeah,
And yeah, there's obviously the all-star team around him as well, but like Shanahan's kind of part of that too. Like he's helped those players become who and what they are. So,
yeah. Do you put
and also coaches generally stay healthy for. I expect to get another 5 years out of Shanahan without worrying about his shoulder or his knees.
right? Yeah, that's another thing too. The longevity you can have a coach for 20 something years, and outside
Yeah,
of Brady, you're not going to get a quarterback for 20 something years. Um,
quite right.
so so yeah.
So I feel like I'm taking a coach in the top five, but I
Okay.
haven't quantified this at all, and I haven't really put that much thought into it. I don't know.
I don't know. It seems like
It's
a good
possible
thought.
that we're gonna laugh at ourselves later and realize no, or maybe realize we should go in the other direction.
I've
But
yeah, I have no idea. It was just like a thought like we could expand on that maybe more in another one. But
yeah, that's
so
fine.
so as far as the previous other question was about Belichick regaining NFL success.
So my sense is that Belichick is washed. He's not a young man anymore, and some of his thinking has become somewhat calcified. And also, he hasn't. He's his staff involved a lot of people who were familiar and raised the Patriot way, and they were very loyal to him. And they weren't necessarily the best options you could find. They're the people that he trusted and wanted to work with. And so it's going to be interesting for Jared Mayo not filling in, the new head coach, um, being the guy following the legend, particularly after Legends have fallen on hard times, and seeing what he'll be able to do in New England. I'm very curious there. Um, but like, yeah, there's clearly coaches that matter. Like, um, Nick Sirianni, Kevin Stefanski, Shane Steichen have all made positive impacts on their teams. And then, of course, you can go in the other direction where you have someone like Mike McCarthy, who's a problem that Dallas is going to have to work around. And there's also Sean McDermott, who I think has generally been a pretty good coach, but his clock management makes me long for the days of peak Andy Reid. That's not a good thing.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, like I do not, I don't think any team that hires Bill Belichick will get his former glory. I think they're going to get the guy who used to be with the Browns.
Yeah, and they might be doing it for trying to get the Shula record. If anything, they might just be doing it to.
I mean, sure, and I love Shula and I hate Belichick, so that's going to cause me pain.
Yeah,
But I also understand it. It'll bring fans to the stadium. It'll bring attention.
yeah. So teams have certainly made worse moves. You know, in the past in terms of like worse reasons for moves. So,
Yeah.
all right. So as far as future projects, was there anything from the 2023 season that inspired either current or future work that you're going to be looking to do?
So the biggest thing was the idea of tweeners, guys who are between positions, like they're not a true defensive lineman, but they're not a true defensive end, or they're not necessarily a true linebacker. I am now going to be a lot kinder to them because NFL defenses have become more fluid. I don't want to call them positionless necessarily, but your responsibilities have changed. Speed is in, the ability to cover the field. Like some of these elite offenses are elite because they force you to defend more of the field. Like the Dolphins have so much vertical speed. The 49ers are brutal both vertically and horizontally. Like if you have a guy who just has a bigger circle, as I'll call it, like he can cover more ground in 2.5 seconds, that's better for your defense. And some of those guys don't necessarily fit the traditional positional molds, but they're good athletically and they can play ball. And those guys are going to rise on my boards. I'm going to try to make some modifications to my methodology. And a few years ago, I modified linebackers after I think there's one guy in Kentucky with the first round, and I did not have anything close there. And in retrospect, I was probably wrong not to account for his level of speed. And so that's the big thing for me.
Okay.
The next thing is, while I still have elite edges over elite cornerbacks, and it's something I'm to watch for, if particularly holding on stars, is simply going to be tolerated and allowed, then that gap narrows quite a bit in my mind. And that's something I'm going to have to watch for. My guess, though, is it's just like an ebb and flow, and eventually they're going to start, like, you're going to see Garrett and Watt drawing more holding penalties again because they get held all the time.
Yeah, and do you think it was a byproduct of the current season, like you said, and there was just like a short-term variance because of that?
Yeah, it could be a situation where the league panicked and said, no mas, no more quarterbacks are going down, do what you have to.
Yeah.
And I actually kind of understand that. Like, this is an entertainment product. It's not necessarily entertaining to watch Zach Wilson for 60 minutes. And I can tell you, I've done that. I was not entertained.
No.
So the other thing is trying to figure out, obviously, quarterback prospects. It's something we're always working on. And, like, one of the teams that massively underperformed their preseason expectations didn't have quarterback injuries to blame. It was just that Bryce Young sucked.
Yeah.
And it's particularly painful for them because C.J. Stroud was the truth. He was awesome in Houston. And while, like, it doesn't bring any of the money back I lost wagering on the number 1 overall pick in the draft, it does make me feel a little bit better that my analysis wasn't terrible. So, like, money gone, but I'm looking forward to the next draft. I'm actually really looking forward to this draft. I want to take some time away in late March, early April to break down the quarterback prospects and the wide receiving class and the rest of it.
Okay.
Like, I'm excited for this draft.
So yeah, let's good transition. So I guess we had a good next topic here, but like the one thing that I've brought up to some of my friends who are Bears fans or just football fans is like what you would do with the pick, and it kind of goes, it's kind of a varied response. So I figured it was a good topic in terms of what you think is most likely to happen, or what you think or what you would do as the Bears GM. So there's a handful of possibilities, and I think the most realistic ones are probably the first 2 that I mentioned here. But I mentioned a total of 4 possibilities. So the first possibility would be Fields getting traded and the Bears drafting their number 1 guy. We'll just say Williams. The second one would be the Bears trading the top pick for a haul and keeping Fields. And the next one would be keeping the pick and keeping the pick, presumably draft a quarterback, and keep Fields. And then the last one would be trading the pick and trading Fields. So I do think you had a response to each of these. So I'll just kind of let you go over those scenarios.
Let me first of all say today massively changed how I feel, but we'll get to that in a second.
Okay.
So first, let me talk about the 4 scenarios. And I think this is a great topic because how often do we have a situation where you have a team with a first-round draft pick who they have to make their 5th-year decision on, and they can legitimately go either way. Like, I would go with A. I would try to trade Fields, use the first pick on my number 1 quarterback, the top guy in the draft, and try to hope that he's a franchise quarterback and that this turns around my franchise. Because finding elite quarterback is the hardest thing to do in the NFL. It's the most important thing to do, and the Bears have a chance right now. So I would do A, and I expect A is most likely. Because Fields has shown his accuracy has some limitations. But as I noted here, the rub here is that Fields might not have the trade value the Bears are hoping for. And the thing I saw mentioned was the expectation is that he would get a mid-day 2 pick, so late 2nd round, early 3rd round. But it's possible that's just wrong. It's possible that his value is nowhere near that, or maybe it's higher than that. I don't know. The market will decide. It only takes one team, but if that team isn't there, if everyone's saying, "Look, the Bears, we know you're going to move on. We're going to get them on the cheap," then the Bears are going to have to decide: are they just willing to dump him at a fire sale, or do they keep him? I don't know.
Yeah, it depends.
And
It
that's
depends. It depends who's calling who. If somebody's calling the Bears will be in a
right.
good spot. If the Bears are calling teams, then we know that they're not in a good spot. So that's I guess how it depends who calls who, in the scenario.
And the Bears are trying to give off the impression that they want to keep Fields and they're open
Of
to
course.
listening to offers in the first pick, but it's bullshitting season, and it might prove to be, well, the other way, where actually no, we're going to listen to offers in the first pick. We're not actually going to take them, but sure, we're going to listen. And also, hey, if anyone wants to change their mind and give us a top first round pick for Fields, well, what are we going to do?
Yeah,
So, like,
and it doesn't do you any good to make your quarterback disgruntled in January right after the season's
no, it does
over.
not.
So there's like you said, like like bullshitting season, like it's like hunting season. It's officially
Yep,
began.
is officially begun.
So like take everything you read, and protect and presume that it's bullshit, and then you'll
Yeah,
be right most of the time. So
exactly. So let's talk about option B. Option B is where they trade the pick for the King's ransom and they build around Fields. And under that situation, we presume they pick up his fifth year option, or they sign him to a contract extension, and they get a massive haul. Like they're certainly going to get more than the Athletic gave them. When I don't know if you saw this, where
I didn't.
the Falcons gave up the 8th overall pick and another first rounder, and I think 2 second rounders. That's not getting it done. That's not going to happen. I think the expected value that I heard was 3 firsts, one of them being high this year, and 3 seconds. And so, like, if that happens, maybe they take it and they see what Fields can do. One thing about Fields is someone put together a video of uncalled hits on Fields, like where Fields was hit either high or low or late or just really, really hard, and no flags. And we've seen this before. We saw this with Carolina. And like, if you have an elite quarter, or I don't want to say elite quarterback, but an athletic quarterback, you don't always necessarily get the same calls. And it is possible. I don't necessarily want to bring race into it, but like, who knows? Certain players may get officiated differently than other players for whatever reasons. And Fields has kind of been playing on hard mode in terms of picking up flags that we would have expected other quarterbacks to get. So that's one issue that Chicago's brain trust may wish to measure. Now, option C was, let's see, the Bears keep both, and that's presumably the situation where A, they wanted to grab the franchise quarterback, and B, I guess the trade value for Fields wasn't so great. In that case, they do not necessarily pick up the 5th year option. They just keep Fields around either to let the other guy develop as a backup, or if Fields is available as a backup, whatever else. But in that situation, it would be awesome to see Fields start, have his best season, and then become a free agent. And I'm sure you would take that too, just to have one great season of Bears quarterbacking. It'd be fun to watch, even if you're a 49ers fan, you are near Chicago.
Yeah,
The vibes would be great.
yeah, and it's funny that you mentioned like 4,000 yards because there's never been a Bears quarterback.
Exactly.
I don't know if you did that on purpose with the number
I
4,000.
did.
Okay, I just want to make sure because I was just talking to a coworker of mine, like wondering. I was saying like even with the extra game, they still can't get 4,000 yards. So I'm just like wondering how many games it would take for them to actually get a 4,000 yard quarterback.
And if they started playing that many games, maybe a quarterback couldn't stay healthy through that many games. It still wouldn't happen. Who the hell
Yeah,
knows?
exactly. So okay, so and then there was the option D, which
Option D is the big brain guy. It's the
yeah,
one where
yeah,
you ever seen the situation where the guy is playing chess and he's one guy's sitting on a chair and the other guy is sitting on his own brain?
yeah.
Like it's that huge. Like so trade down and still get a franchise quarterback. Look, if the Bears could do that, if the Bears can find their guy in this draft and get a Munster haul, that'd be amazing. Like the unreal scenario is where they grab like quarterback 3 or quarterback 4, and they also pick up an elite wide receiver, and they hit the ground running next year. If they can pull that off, then pulls, you've earned all your money and then some. I think that would be a challenge because you need to find a counterparty willing to give up that much trade capital. Um, and so we're gonna have to wait and see. But again, my expectation is they either trade Fields or just can't get anything from him. It doesn't matter, and they use the number 1 overall pick on quarterback 1.
Yeah,
That is what I expect.
yeah, and that was I threw that in there. That was like like you just said, it was trying to be the smartest guy in the room. Like I don't. That's definitely the least likely um, scenario that would play out. But it was just something I wanted to throw in there just to kind of see what kind of reaction it would get. Um, but okay,
And so the thing I mentioned, by the way, about today was legend Greg Gabriel, who, by the way, and he's been on the record as he's never been wrong about a quarterback.
okay,
Um, in all the years I've been doing this, I've never seen a player fall off like that and not recover from a horrible game. The club's interest to have to find out why it happened and is there cause of concern that it could happen again. Again, very concerning. And that's Greg Gabriel talking about Caleb Williams.
okay,
And then Brad Spielberger quote tweeted him and said, unprecedented fall off. 8.5 yards per attempt, 66% completion percentage. Um, just a great job in his hardest games. Like, what are we talking about here? And to be honest, I'm with Brad on this one. Again, having not done my overall analysis, my sense is that Williams is still quarterback 1 right now, and that while there can be questions about every prospect, for the most part, Williams should have good answers for said questions. So that was today. We got the signal from Greg, which is if he's questioning Williams, I think you have to love Williams.
okay, fair enough. And by the way, I'm looking forward to revisiting this in about 3.5 months.
Oh yeah, this draft is gonna be an
So,
awesome draft, awesome pod. Looking forward to it.
so all right, so let's go into we're at probably the hour 15 mark here, and we're finally into the playoff uh,
Probably like
part here. But
75 minutes, which isn't so bad for
that's
us.
fine. That's fine. When we started this whenever I start these podcasts and I tell my wife I'm about to start recording, she says, "All right, I'll see you in a couple hours." It's like, yeah, it's about
Yeah.
right, and might even be a
Yep.
little longer than that a lot of times because of technical issues or whatever. But so let's start the 2024 NFL playoff discussion with the team. Like who you're most surprised to see making the playoffs?
So from before the season, it has to be Houston. My expectations were very low for them. They were terrible last year. And
Yeah.
there's getting a rookie quarterback, new head coach. Like you had to figure this was a rebuilding year. And instead, Stroud was pretty great, and they I know their schedule was kind of soft, but they still won their division. They have 10 wins. They won a must-win game in Indianapolis the final week of the season. All credit to them. Well done, Houston. Nice job. Um, if you want to go from during the season, from late in the season, it's Pittsburgh. Because after they were 7-7, I thought, well, this is the year that perhaps they did not have a winning record. Mike Tomlin, the season streak end, and jokes on me, they won 3 games in a row, got the help they needed, and they're in the playoffs again. So well done, Pittsburgh. Like those would be the 2 biggest surprises.
Okay. So with the upcoming matchups, either this weekend or possible ones after this weekend, either from like a fan perspective or from a financial money betting perspective, which matchups are you hoping to see or looking forward to seeing the most?
So my first thing I wrote was hoping Eagles versus Chiefs. That is the straight cash homie matchup. Cash those futures, baby. Um, but like in terms of actual expecting and also just as a football fan, I'd love to see another Ravens 49ers game, and that's also fine because like I have wagered on them as well. Um, like this is good. I'm rooting for both number 1 seeds to get through. Um, my real nightmare scenario is that none of these 4 teams make the Super Bowl. Like if we get Bills Cowboys, wah, wah, wah. So like,
Yeah, I would.
and having said that though, like a Bills Lions Super Bowl would be awesome just to see one of those teams get a Super Bowl.
Sure. Yeah,
Give those fan bases a ring.
yeah,
Um, so like outside of the Super Bowl, other matchups I'd be really excited to see. Um, Browns Ravens and Bills Chiefs would be a great divisional round. Good matchups. You have a kind of rivalry between the Bills and Chiefs. The Bills finally get one of these games at home. They would be obviously be favored. That would be interesting to see. Um, Seeing the divisional matchup again between the Ravens and Browns, like that's probably the matchup that the Ravens are least interested in seeing next week. I know that the Dolphins, if healthy, can be scary, but I think the Browns are just a tougher matchup for the Ravens right now, given the injuries the Dolphins are dealing with. In the NFC, uh, I want to see the rematch between the Lions and Dallas. And by the way, everyone remembers the um, Lions getting screwed late in the game when the refs got confused. That's the Brad Allen crew.
yeah,
But they also screwed up a tripping call earlier in the fourth quarter when they called it on the wrong team. They called it on the Cowboys. And if that's reversed, then it's unlikely the Lions even get a chance
sure.
to get the late touchdown. So, like, um, I'd like to see that matchup again. Also, just a cool matchup. Um, I also think that's the last team the Lions have beaten in the playoffs so long ago.
Yeah, was it like
1991.
91? Yeah, it was that.
Yeah,
So yeah,
that
who was the quarterback then? That was before Eric Kramer, right? Uh,
I'm not remembering the quarterback.
uh,
Obviously, the Lions were based around the running game at that point. Um,
yeah. Let me.
They ended up losing to Washington in the NFC Championship game, who then beat the Bills in the Super Bowl. Um, let's see. The ultimate game in the NFC is, of course, it would be the seventh matchup in the NFC Championship game between the Cowboys and 49ers. And that's not just like seventh playoff matchup, that's seventh NFC Championship matchup. Like the first two NFC Championship games, and this is, by the way, post merger, of course, that's when there was a conference, were the 49ers versus the Cowboys, with the Cowboys winning both of them. They lost the next Super Bowl to the Colts, and then they beat the Dolphins. But yeah, this would be number seven. The Cowboys have a 4-2 edge. Um, that would be kind of interesting to see. I assume you, as a 49ers fan, just would like to beat the Cowboys again in an NFC Championship game, get some revenge. I'm sure you remember the Jimmy Johnson days and still have some anger about that.
That's yeah. So yeah. So so to give proper perspective. I mean, most people might know my age if they've watched this podcast before, but so I was about I was in my teenage years or uh, early adolescent years, I should say, when I became a fan of the team. It was before their Super Bowl run. It was probably when the Cowboys were good when I was rooting for the Niners. So yeah, those are my first NFL memories, and I always felt like even as a fan, I always felt like we were going to lose those games against the Cowboys just because that's how good the Cowboys were at that time. So
I mean, the Cowboys
anytime
were loaded.
anytime we get a chance to beat the Cowboys now is a blessing. So yeah, I have some good fun with a buddy of mine who's a Cowboys fan. When these and he fully expects the Niners to make the Super Bowl as well, but obviously going to be rooting for his Cowboys. But he thinks that yeah he's with me in the Niners, and yeah I would love another one of those matchups. It's been a while. It's been about uh, 30 years, maybe. Was it
93 or
five?
so.
95?
Yeah, like,
Is 94, 95? Because
yeah,
we beat
something in
it
that
was the
range. Like,
it was the last Super Bowl the Niners won with Young, and we destroyed the Chargers in that Super Bowl. And I think
yep.
that was the week or week or two before was the Cowboys, and I think that was the last time we played them in the title game. We've played them a few
In the
times
playoffs since
since
then,
then,
yes.
and won those games. So yeah,
Yep.
neener. But yeah, I would love a championship. I would love another championship game because yeah, I've been doing this tradition the past like 10, 11, 12 years with my buddies from high school where we've been getting together for the NFC title games and AFC title games, and the Niners have been in like 6 or 7 of them, something like that, in that time. And this would be like a new team that we haven't seen the Niners play yet. We've seen the Giants, we've seen the Eagles, we've seen I don't know. There's been quite a bit of teams that the Niners, different
Seahawks.
teams at the
I mean,
Seahawks, yeah, a lot,
Rams.
yeah, a lot of basically their whole division except the Cardinals.
Yep.
So yeah, it's yeah. So I would like to see another team. It's it'll probably be the Cowboys, might be the Lions, but yeah, I'm excited. I think we're gonna make the Super Bowl this year, but we'll have to hope everything falls our way too, because yeah, it's a combination of many favorable fortunes, as you know. So
Yeah.
it's not just being the best team; it's having the best luck sometimes too. So
Exactly right. Football's a weird game any given Sunday. Like you're going to be facing teams that are at least capable of beating you, even if they're obviously going to be underdogs against you guys.
yep,
So, I mean, it's a blessing if you guys get there. I'd love to see the Jets playing
yep.
one of these years.
So yeah, I was as you were talking, I was looking it up, and it was actually Eric Kramer who started that Lions game back in
It's funny.
91,
Good memory.
92 playoffs. So Rodney Peete was the starting quarterback to start the year, but then it looks like he might have gotten hurt or something, and it looks like they had Rodney Peete, Andre Ware, and Eric Kramer spend time as quarterbacks sometime during that season. So, but yeah, it looks like, based on what I'm reading here, Kramer was the starting quarterback for that game. So that Eric Kramer, last quarterback to win. So Goff, that's the kind of company you're going to be sharing with, hopefully soon. So,
Hey,
okay,
look,
so
it would be nice to see the Rams do something like, I don't know. Oh, sorry, not the Rams. The gods. You see Goff, you see Stafford traded, and boom, boom, boom. My
yeah,
brain stops working.
mhm,
But it would be nice to see the Lions do something in the playoffs. That's a fan base like the Jets have not seen a Super Bowl. They're due.
yeah, yeah. I don't have many Lions friends, but I do have one that I talk to occasionally on Facebook Messenger, and yeah, I see how passionate he is about the Lions, and yeah, I do root for fan bases to get their chance in the sun, even if it's just for one season or even just one game. Just
I
have
mean,
that
this is a
enjoyment.
franchise that has seen their stars retire on them in their primes. Like Barry Sanders just
Yeah,
couldn't take it anymore.
that's
And I don't
that's
blame him.
that's heartbreaking, and I don't know if I would have stuck with them that long, because I've given up on the White Sox as a fan. Like I'm a true, like I can't I don't like I have too much other things going on in my life to be focusing on owners that I don't like, teams where they have shitty owners. So I'm not saying I've fully abandoned the White Sox, but I don't really actively follow them anymore. So I kudos to Lions fans for sticking it out for teams that long. I don't have that kind of time anymore in my life to be rooting for people who I don't really give a shit about or who are running teams in the ground or whatever.
I
But
mean, good for you. And
uh,
yet I have been unable to quit the Mets, the Jets, the Knicks, or the Rangers,
yeah,
despite whatever droughts we may have survived.
yeah.
So, like,
So
yeah.
yeah.
All right.
All right.
Let's
So
see.
so the next question here is from NFL Pinnacle Beat. He was asking about the chances for Tampa in the NFC and Houston in the AFC.
The problem for Houston is that Cleveland's defense fucks. I mean, Stroud is the truth, but he's still a rookie quarterback in his first playoff game, facing a monster defense. And the other thing is, I mean, playoff Flacco could show up out of nowhere. He did it once before and then ruined my life. Like,
Yeah,
if he throws for like 15 touchdowns and no interceptions in the playoffs, after everything we've seen from him, what are we going to do? Like,
yeah.
at that point, yes, you build the statue. And I think my rough estimate is like 88 inches, like slightly larger than life size, but close enough that it feels plausible.
So
So, like,
so
that
so
would work for me.
so yeah, that's a tease to a question I had later, but we'll just address it now. Is
Yeah.
Tri Brown's asking how tall the Flacco Super Bowl statue would be in Cleveland, 420 inches or 69 feet. So,
I mean, those are some enormous, enormous statues. I don't think you have to do that. I think slightly larger than life size is a good fit. I mean, people walk around, it feels real, but it's also a little bigger. So, like, there's the majesty to it. That's what I would go with. I'd go with 88 inches.
yeah, he would. I mean, to think of the cult heroes in Cleveland, to imagine the type of salute he would get in Cleveland if somehow they ran across 3 road games, most likely, and you
Oh,
know,
yeah.
I mean, oh man, you know, as much as it would suck for the night, like there's a part of me that would hope the Niners would lose in the previous game just so I can root for that scenario because I could not root for Cleveland if they're playing the
Of
Niners.
course.
But
Of course.
oh my goodness, that would be that would be another.
You know what? Let's get Browns Lions, a good old NFL
Oh
championship from
man,
the 1950s.
oof, yeah, Otto Brown and
Graham versus Lane.
yeah,
Like,
Graham, Otto Graham, yeah, Otto Graham, yeah. Oh man, oof. NFL. I just hear the NFL films music in my head right now.
yeah.
Um,
That would be awesome. And
yeah.
like shoot it on a grainy camera. Like I don't know if you've seen the movie The Holdovers, but they kind of shot that movie with the early 70s kind of style, coloring and whatever else, cameras. Like shoot that game, obviously in high definition and everything else, but with the old timey camera styles, so it feels like an old game.
Oh yeah, they need to have a network. Yeah, they need to add that to like, if they have like 5 or 6 telecasts of games, why can't they have one that does, something like that where it just has
I
some kind of
mean, they've started to
tilt.
experiment with stuff like the
Yeah,
Nickelodeon games,
yeah,
so who knows
yeah,
what's coming in the future.
yeah, exactly. And then did you address the Tampa part of that question? I think.
So let's talk about
Yeah.
Tampa. They
Yeah.
are um the worst team in the playoffs. I feel very confident saying that, and thankfully for them, they're at home against a team that's falling apart. So that gives at least Tampa Bay a shot.
Yeah.
But and also Mayfield has had a solid season. I think I cover this later. Let's load that part of the draft up where actually it was the last of the games. I have to scroll down a little bit. But let's talk about the numbers. So Mayfield, I think, threw for 4,044 yards, 28 touchdowns, 10 interceptions. Those are really good numbers. Obviously, the Bears would fucking kill for them.
Yeah.
But like, I also don't think he's completely healthy. Like, he's looked awful the last couple of weeks. They beat Carolina last weekend, 9-0, and I think the week before they had a pretty poor game. Let's load up the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yeah. It's not pretty. I think they lost
Yeah.
the week before.
They lost to the Saints 23-13 at home. I mean, they did drop 30 on the Jaguars on the 24th and drop 34 on the 17th, 29 on the Falcons. So, like, I might be being unfair to them, might be some recency bias, but I also just can check my numbers, and my overall numbers for them have them as the worst team in the playoffs.
Okay.
So like, I don't have a ton of faith in them, but they could still win on Monday night. They aren't exactly large dogs; they're small home underdogs. Also, random fact: this season, both the fives went to the fours and beat them on the road this year, which is kind of random given the likelihood of playing a team outside of your division.
Sure.
In both cases, these are teams that are not divisional rivals. They happen to play on the road against these teams and beat them. And so, like, yes, Tampa Bay has a chance, but spoiler alert, I am on the Eagles, even though the Eagles are falling apart.
Okay. All right.
All right, next question.
Okay. Next question was from Clytus, asking about the San Fran Baltimore, and I don't really know the context. He posted this, I think, on January 3rd. So, and I don't really know if
it is possible that the prices have changed since then.
So,
but at the time, the matchup theoretically played plus 350. Yeah, sure.
Whenever gambling odds are mentioned, I always try to preface the odds and making sure that people know not to just blindly bet. I mean, I think
good on you, my man.
So most people, I mean, I just assume that most of the people that listen here are, are cognizant of that, but I also want to, in case there are people who are newer to betting, to just not blindly blindly bet things. Take some time to look at numbers, and if somebody got plus 350 but you're only getting plus 250, then don't bet the plus 250 if you don't think those are good odds. Like, I mean, obviously if you're an action junkie, whatever, but anyways, I digress. So the San Fran Baltimore matchup plays roughly plus 350. Which team in either conference is most likely to upend the favorite and ruin the seemingly obvious parlay or parloot?
So first of all, to answer the question, Buffalo. Also, I just want to note that I think those prices are long gone. I think at this point, San Francisco's you're gonna find them around closer to minus 140 in that range, and Baltimore closer to plus 120. But to answer the question, Buffalo is the best team outside of the top two. They're also very dangerous because Allen embraces the variance. Like if he's having a good day, he could destroy any team in the NFL, and that includes both Baltimore and San Francisco. After Buffalo, I'd consider Dallas to be the next most dangerous threat. Although, I mean, ask yourself, if you see McCarthy on one sideline and Shanahan on the other sideline with the Super Bowl on the line, like which coach are you trusting? Which team are you trusting? And so like that
I know which one I'm trusting. I know which one I'm trusting.
Exactly right. In terms of other teams that could screw up this potential matchup, like Cleveland with their defense and with God knows playoff Flacco showing up, they could be a problem. I mentioned that I feel like the most dangerous team outside of Dallas in the NFC is Detroit. While I mean, I think San Francisco would be perfectly okay playing them in the NFC Championship game. Like if Dallas was their other option, they would take Detroit. But I don't think Detroit necessarily is an easy out. The same way I would view Philadelphia, Tampa Bay. Actually, the Rams might be a bit annoying. But like, you can't play Green Bay in the NFC Championship game. That would be a divisional round game.
Yeah.
But like, if they could choose, the teams I think that like San Francisco would be most afraid of would be Dallas, followed by Detroit, and the Rams could at least be annoying divisional matchup. And in the AFC, I think it's definitely Buffalo. I don't think it's even close.
Mm-hmm.
And after that, like Kansas City is, they have Mahomes. A team with Mahomes is always going to be at least somewhat of a challenge. But this year's Kansas City squad, there are people who complain when the NCAA tournament bracket comes out. Like there's a 3 seed and 6 seed that these were teams that they wanted to bet on and they're playing each other. And then there's a 3 seed and 6 seed. Well, these are the teams I wanted to fade and bet against and they're playing each other. And that always feels like horseshit. Well, so like this year, like in the AFC anyway, between Kansas City and Miami, these are teams that I both feel are somewhat fade worthy, but I feel like Miami is particularly fade worthy, being a shell of themselves. And so, spoiler alert, I'm on Kansas City this weekend, but I expect to be fading whoever wins this game the week after.
Okay.
So, like, that is my best chance, my best attempt at least to answer that question.
Okay. All right. So, I'm going to address this question before you answer it. I did want to correct. I'm going to correct something you had in the outline after this. So,
sure.
So if Miami beats KC, Baltimore, Buffalo, San Fran to win the Super Bowl, would that be the greatest playoff run of all time? And I just want to correct because you were going to talk about the order of this, but there was they would end up playing Baltimore first because Baltimore's the 1 seed, and if Buffalo won as well. Miami would be the 6th seed versus the 1 seed Baltimore. So I just want to make sure that you knew that the order that you had, because you were going to correct that, but I just want to make sure that the order that Sports Stocks 2 had was correct.
Thank you for that.
So I just want to make sure that was addressed.
You are correct, and I do appreciate it.
So I should have addressed it before the recording, but that's fine. We all make mistakes. So to answer his question, would you consider that one of the best, if not the greatest run of all time if they
It
were
would
able to
be
pull that off.
absurd. It would like you're being what I consider two of the top 10 teams in NFL history with the Ravens and 49ers. And then you have, at least in my opinion, a better than average number 2 seed with Buffalo. And finally, you beat Kansas City in the freezing cold
Yeah,
on Saturday night.
epic. Yeah,
Like
that might be the coldest game of each team's franchise history. I think I read.
it's certainly possible. I mean, how many truly freezing games has Miami played in? I know they played in a snowy Thanksgiving game against Dallas, which is kind of random to think about.
Yeah.
But yeah, that this game and that run, that would be an amazing run for Miami. I would be broke at the end of it. Um, but yeah, that would be, to me anyway, the greatest run I could certainly think of. And there have been other impressive runs, but that would be number one for me, given how good both Baltimore and San Francisco are.
Okay. All right, so let's finally get into the matchups here. So, just gonna go in chronological order here. We already addressed the Tri Browns question here. So the first matchup, and I think everyone kind of expected this when we saw once you see the matchups, you kind of get the sense. Most of the time, it's the AFC South champion hosting this game. At least lately.
Sure. Yep.
So once we saw who their opponent was going to be, we kind of figured that's what was going to be. So Cleveland at Houston is the first game. So I think you have some discussion here.
Yeah. So let's start with Houston's offensive coordinator. It's got the name of Bobby Slowick, and there's this photo going around of people who were on the 2013 Washington Redskins staff. And so you have Bobby Slowick, who's an offensive coordinator now with Houston. You have Matt LaFleur, who's now the Packers head coach. Sean McVay, Rams head coach. Kyle Shanahan, 49ers head coach. And Mike McDaniel, Dolphins head coach. And I think we can agree that all 4 of those latter guys, all those head coaches, are premium head coaches. They've done a great job in their respective locations. I think everyone has to be happy with those hires.
Sure.
And then you have Bobby Slowick, who, well, let me read what I wrote. I want Slowick to have his Kaiser Soze moment. No running plays on first down, just straight play action and dropbacks. Give no plays away. And his problem has been he's been calling way too many running plays with a very, very poor running game and putting Stroud in tough positions than he certainly has to be in. And I don't remember where I first heard this, but the idea was don't call a running play unless you'd be happy with a 1-yard gain. So if it's third and short, or even second and short in a situation where you're okay with getting a first down instead of taking a deep shot, that's fine. Call a running play there. But in general, put the ball in Stroud's hands as much as possible. Now, with Tank Dell out, he got hurt early in the season. We're going to be seeing Cleveland focus on taking away Nico Collins. And Cleveland has a very good defense, so they want to try and take away one guy. It's going to force the Houston offense to adapt, and we'll see if Slow can. He's not he's bad in terms of tactics. It's strategically, I think he can work on things by, again, shifting his run-pass balance a little more towards the pass. But we'll see what he does. Another issue for Houston is their right tackle, Charlie Helk, is fucking terrible. And it's one of those things where Cleveland has a couple different options who they want to line up against him. But anytime you see Garrett against Heck, yeah. Either giving him some help, getting the ball out, or running the ball to the other side. Because
Charlie Hell or Charlie Crap or Charlie Shit.
Yeah, exactly. It's a tough spot for Houston there.
Yeah.
And then on the other side of the ball, Flacco has he played in the game against Houston this season. He had 368 yards, 3 touchdowns, and 2 interceptions, which is a very Flacco-esque line, particularly on a good day. He will throw some interceptions, but he'll also try and make some big plays. And I assume he's going to play the same way on Saturday. And if we get playoff Flacco from years before, where you get all the yards and touchdowns and none of the interceptions, then Houston's fucked. In terms of like what I saw in the game, my initial thought was that like Cleveland's the better team, but they are on the road, and CJ Stroud is a hell of a quarterback, and they were getting 2.5 points at home. My initial read was I think Houston's the right side, so I was on them a little bit, and then the line moved to 3, and like plus 135 started appearing. I was like, really? Yes, Cleveland's better, but I don't know, man. And so, like, when you live the full Kelly life, when you bet on a game and then the line moves against you, you bet more on the game. You don't necessarily feel great, by the way, because the line moved against you. But like, this is the life I've chosen. And then the line moved back the other way, so it looks like I'm done with the game. But like, I am on Houston. I admit they should be the underdogs here. I'm not sure they should be sizable underdogs, like Cleveland around 53, 54% makes a certain amount of sense to me. Cleveland, like 55% or above, is okay. That's a little bit of a different read in the situation than I have. So we'll see. But like, I feel like it's going to be a fun game to watch. I am enjoying watching the Stroud experience. And also, Flacco is, if nothing else, interesting and enjoyable to watch. And again, that defense is amazing for Cleveland. So like, yeah, I look forward to that game.
Yeah, and I'll say that not having the Niners in this round, like I'm looking at all the matchups, and before we get into the other matchups, I'm really excited about this 3 days of football. Not only for the matchups, but like the weather elements too. There's going to be some weather elements.
Oh yeah,
that could come into play.
It's like the next two AFC games both have huge weather elements.
Oh man. All right, so let's get into that. So we were teasing this before, but Miami, Kansas City, gonna be a cold ass game. Where I know that. So we're talking right now. So we were talking. I was messaging you about weather yesterday, and because I don't. We could talk about this now or later, like in terms of like your weather games. But I like weather. We're talking about like probably sub-zero temperatures or around zero temperatures for this game. Because right now we're dealing with snow, and that's going to turn into ice, just cold, Arctic cold, and it's going to be fun. I'm just curious. I'm really looking forward to these types of matchups where weather. I mean, I know sometimes weather will, can ruin a game, but I'm really excited about some of these games. So let's get into the new Ice Bowl, the 2024 version of it with Miami, Kansas City. So you had already talked a little bit about both teams, more so about Miami, but feel free to just kind of pick up from there.
So let me ask you something. I know you live in a cold weather place. I live in a cold weather place as well. I grew up in one. But have you ever lived someplace where it was warm, like in California or in the South? Like, you ever spent like a year there? Right? Okay.
No.
I went to college in Southern California, but apart from that, I lived all my life in cold places. I've lived in Mass, Wisconsin. I've lived in New York. I've lived up outside of Boston, and I've spent a decent amount of time also visiting Winnipeg. So like, when you live somewhere cold, your body adjusts to that. I assume your blood gets a little thick or whatever else.
Yeah.
Versus when you live somewhere warm, like when I lived in California for a while, I'd suddenly come visit New York, and in situations where I would wear a t-shirt, I'd want a hoodie, I'd want a sweater. I was like, I'm cold in situations where I did not used to be cold. And like, you have Kansas City, which is used to living in the Midwest, and you have the players who live in Miami, play in Miami, who are used to somewhat warmer conditions. I feel like while they both have to play in the same weather, it'll be a tougher challenge for the visiting Miami Dolphins. So that's one thing.
Okay.
And I know McDaniel, the coach, has a sense of humor, has the shirt, I wish it were colder. Okay, man.
All right. Well,
I don't know. I feel like it's going to be plenty cold, but up to you. You do you.
Mother Nature is going to take you up on that offer.
Sure. And you might remember the Vikings head coach, Bud Grant. He was awesome.
The name sounds familiar, yeah.
He also spent some time up in Canada as well. And like, he used to wear t-shirts in brutally cold weather because he was just that freaking tough.
Yeah.
And so some guys are just built different. Hopefully Kansas City's built different because I am fading the fuck out of Miami. They're a shell of themselves. Like they're 2-star wide receivers. I don't think either of them is going to be 100% between Hill and Waddle. Amazingly, Tua is the healthiest of the trio. Then on defense, their edge rushers have just gone down one by one. It's been a brutal, brutal scene for Miami. They ran out of gas at home against Buffalo last weekend, and now they're in hard mode. One other thing, where was this? I feel like their best hope, like their edges are gone. They have a decent guy in the interior, Christian Wilkins. So like perhaps they can get some kind of interior pass rush, move Mahomes off the spot, and try to disrupt the Kansas City offense that way. But otherwise, I feel like it's going to be a challenge for Miami on both sides of the ball. Offensively, the Chiefs, they've clearly fallen back from what they were, but they still have Kelsey. They still have Mr. Top Right Mahomes. On defense, they've got Jones. I feel like this is a situation Kansas City should win comfortably, because this Miami squad they're wrecked. They're absolutely wrecked. And say what you will about Kansas City, they were still good in all phases of this game. They weren't what they were. They weren't elite, but just like by DVOA, top 10 offense, number 6 overall, top 10 defense, I think number 10, even top 10 special teams, I think. So this is a very good Kansas City team, and I think they're better than the Dolphins, and they're at home. But Lord knows this. My market ratings for both Kansas City and Miami, like one of the things I do is I reverse engineer the market power ratings, and then I have my own, just so I can quantify how I view particular teams.
Sure.
Like I view the Chiefs as worse than the market things, but I view the Dolphins as a lot worse than the market things right now.
Okay.
So fading the Dolphins, but also going to be fading the Chiefs almost certainly the following weekend.
Okay.
Yeah,
most likely against Buffalo.
That is the expectation.
So that's the next game here. So Pittsburgh, Buffalo. So here's weather game number 2.
And it's a little bit different, by the way. The first game is just going to be incredibly freaking cold with some with gusts of wind. This game is like a pure wind game. I mean, it's not going to be warm. Don't get me wrong, but like it's going to be hard to throw the ball in this weather.
So yeah, and I did want to mention my buddy was sending me a message during the recording here saying that there was a news report about the weather for that game where several inches of snow may have already accumulated for the tailgating and the game time. So not only will the game be fun, but the tailgating beforehand also fun.
So there's a couple places in this country I want to go tailgate. I want to tailgate in Kansas City, I want to tailgate in Pittsburgh, and I want to tailgate in Buffalo. I enjoy a good tailgate. That was one of my favorite things about living in Wisconsin was the college football games for the Badgers, tailgating for those.
Yeah,
good times for me.
Yeah,
very good times.
Miller Park was my favorite tailgate experience.
That's cool. Good
game.
Beer.
So, yeah, for sure. So,
all right.
So yeah, go ahead.
So with the wind in this game, which is a bit of an equalizer, it'll force both teams to rely more on their ground game. Now for the Steelers, Mason Rudolph, it's a very small sample, but he's been highly effective in limited usage, jumpstart their offense. So like the Steelers fired Matt Canada, they changed from Pickett to Rudolph, and their offense is now more dangerous, more effective, more threatening. However you want to put it, it is a better offense. But like they're facing the Bills, and the Bills are the 3rd best team in the NFL, and they're at home. So like we have a team that's been good in a small sample versus a team that's been very good overall. The Bills, even when they were something like 6-5 or something, they were obviously much better than the record, and then they ran the table to finish the season. So good for the Bills. They deserve the number 2 seed. They are monsters. In a weaker year, in a different year, they could have been a 1 seed.
Mm-hmm.
So this is a tough matchup for Pittsburgh. But one of the things is, when this matchup was initially posted, just going by Circa, I believe they posted an over-under of 41.5 and -11. And this was before they immediately realized, oh my God, this is a weather game. And the total dropped like a rock, and it dropped from 11 to 10, and even some 9.5, and even seen some 9s now. And so I am kind of kicking myself to not even thinking about the fact that it was a weather game grabbing the under. I did grab a little bit of Pittsburgh on the spread, but only a little bit because the early numbers, just because anything more than 10.5, I felt like, the Steelers team hasn't been bad, and just by their nature, they try to play close games, and McDermott is the kind of guy that can get conservative, particularly with a small lead, keep the game close on his end. So I took the points, but it's not like I particularly like Pittsburgh in this game. It's just a matter of it being a weather game and potentially being a weird game.
Yeah, and I've been looking at Pittsburgh statistics, and I'm just it's blowing my mind that that in the year of 2023, well now in 2024, that there's a team that went 10-7 that threw for 13 passing touchdowns in the entire season. And
that is amazing.
I meant to mention that before. I talked about this with my buddy, and the leader of the team was Pickett with 6.
How many did Rudolph have in 4 games? Like 3 or 4?
5, 4.
Oh, that's great.
Yeah.
You prorate that over a course of a full season, and you can get 20 touchdowns, my man.
So it's just, it's just like under a passing touchdown per game in this era. Just kind of blew my mind that a team could be 10-7. Like you said, the nature of the game with the win, especially, Pittsburgh loves to run the ball, so that'll eat up. That'll cut the number of possessions down for the game.
I mean, you remember the Bills-Cowboys game? The Bills are quite comfortable running the ball too. Like McDermott has no problem playing a ground game.
Well, and I think I mean, not to be the conservative guy, because I'm really not the old school conservative like run the ball guy, but Buffalo has been running the ball well. I don't really know. I know there's factors into that, and I know that, but I know that they have been running the ball pretty well in the last in their little streak here. So like I do anticipate a lot of running the ball, especially with the wind. So one of the things we discussed with weather in our side chat was how and it shouldn't be a secret to most people, but people get intimidated by certain weather with totals and automatically bet unders for a lot of when there's certain conditions. But really, it's only wind that you have to worry about. With
wind takes away passing games, and rain certainly can be an issue, but with wet balls and stuff making it hard to cast. But like snow games, they can be really high scoring. We've seen snow games where not the totals, but the scores ended up in the 70s altogether between the two teams. So where the offensive players can cut and the defensive players have to react, and so that's a challenge. So it can vary, but this I do feel is underific.
Yeah.
And now it seems like a good segue to talk about 3 of the weather games from my childhood.
Sure. Yeah. Let's do it.
This was before your football fandom.
I was born in '83, just to give perspective. So there's.
So you would have been alive for certainly the '85 AFC Championship game between the Dolphins and the Patriots, and the Patriots pulled off the upset in Miami in the rain, which I viewed as unfortunate for 2 reasons. Because first of all, it denied the Dolphins a chance to win a Super Bowl with Marina and Shula, and second of all, it denied the Bears a chance to get revenge on the only team that had beaten them during their otherwise perfect season. Both teams wanted that rematch, and we didn't get it, and then the Patriots got destroyed.
Yeah, and obviously not old enough to know, but the third part would be it denied the fans of a better matchup. So
yes,
it was 3-pronged because I look at the stats of that game, and it's obviously in Bears lore. It added to the Bears lore that they destroyed the Patriots. But like I think there's something to say about like, oh, it could have added more to their legacy of that one season if they would have beaten the Dolphins, avenge their loss. But
Yep.
can't
Didn't
go
work
back
out.
now. So
And then before that, we had the Mud Bowl between the Dolphins and the Jets, also in Miami. This
okay,
one went the Dolphins' way, I think 14-0. And that was a game where there was a decent Jets team, and it had been better weather. Also, that was the strike year.
okay,
It could have been the Jets' first Super Bowl since the merger. Didn't end up happening. And then finally, there's the Freezer Bowl between the San Diego Superchargers and the Cincinnati Bengals. And the Chargers came in with the high-flying Dan Fats offense, and they were just cold. I mean, what are you going to do? I'm actually going to look up the score of that game because I don't remember it. I do remember, obviously, the Bengals won. Chargers, Bengals, AFC Championship game, 1982. Freezer Bowl, 1981 AFC Championship game, 27-7. Yeah, that is a sound beating.
wow.
So hopefully we see a repeat of that in Kansas City against Miami. That would make me very happy.
So yeah, I went to one really cold Bears game, say like 15 or 16 years ago. They played the Texans, and it was, I don't know if it was the coldest game in Bears history, but it was not, if not top 2 or 3. And yeah, it was below zero. It's just a miserable experience. I think we got the people I went with. We got to the game in the second quarter when we left at the end of the third. It was that bad, so it was just not fun.
So I'm going to pimp out a Seattle company called Feathered Friends. They make something
Okay.
called the Rock and Ice Parka. Googling.
Okay.
I have not one but 2 of those jackets and a set of the pants.
Okay.
Because I do not do cold. Like, and people see me in these enormous fucking jackets. I look like the big puffy coat from Seinfeld or like a Michelin man. And they say, "Are you cold?" I'm like, "No, I'm not cold. Look at the size of this jacket. That's the point of this jacket. That's its reason for existence."
Oh, the Costanza.
So yeah, I'm a huge
Costanza's
fan of
ticket.
warm weather gear. Like, go have fun on the cold weather. Just make sure you're not cold.
Yep. Yeah.
Getting back to the Bills game, like if you just compare the expected points from what was initially posted to what's now, I think the over under now down to 34. And so initially, like they were expecting 15 points roughly from Pittsburgh and like 26 from Buffalo, and now it's down to 12 from Pittsburgh and 22 from Buffalo. So like the weather has affected our expectations. We've lost basically about a touchdown in terms of expected points. So yeah, I enjoy watching weather games. I can understand that fans don't necessarily want to be out there in the cold. So we might not see quite as excited house in Kansas City. I assume Buffalo is just not going to give a fuck. But yeah, I get it. It's going to affect the game. It's going to affect the fans. And some games are fun to watch on television. Oh, actually, I'm sorry. There's one topic we completely we left out of the outline.
Okay.
Peacock.
Okay.
You understand what I'm referring to? The Taylor Swift game, the
Yeah.
Saturday night game is not on television.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. I didn't. Yeah, I didn't even think about. Yeah.
I didn't either until we just it came up now. Like, how obnoxious is that of the league? Like, forcing all the Swifties if they want to watch that game to have to get Peacock just to watch one game.
That's yeah. That's like, to use a dad pun here. That's kind of cool of the NFL to do that, but
yeah, it is. It absolutely is. And so I am not giving Peacock a dime. I will instead give a local sports bar significantly more than $6.
Yeah.
And I'm going to go out and have a good time, and I'm going to watch the game with some friends.
Good man. Our plans for tomorrow are pending the weather for the next 24 hours. I'm looking out my window right now. It doesn't look like it's snowed anymore. So I'm hoping that it's going to get worse later this evening, I think. But yeah, I'm not. I want to. I'm going to be at a friend's, I think, if all things go well for those games tomorrow. But yeah, that's a good point. I mean, we already have Peacock, but yeah, yeah, I agree. Don't you're support local business in this case.
Exactly right. Let me ask
Oh,
you this: how did you end up with Peacock in the first place? Was there a particular show that you wanted to watch, or
oh,
did you like streaming?
that's my most of the streaming choices are the wife's choices. So
Okay.
those are on her
Okay. Fair enough.
monthly charges. So I personally, I was, at the time, the only thing that I was mad about was when Office went from Netflix to Peacock because I'm an Office fan. I got the Office Stanley shirt here, dribbling the basketball from season one here, but that was the only thing that I was mad about with Peacock, and then she ended up getting it, so I was like, whatever, she's got it, so I'm just gonna watch it, whatever. But
I have one Office question for you.
sure.
What season was the episode where Dwight Schrute was talking about how it's not safe to ride shotgun, it's much safer to ride behind the driver?
Oh,
And then they just brake checked him.
it might have been season 3, I think.
I think that was
That was
the only
2
episode of
or
The
3.
Office I ever randomly caught.
Okay.
And it's like, oh, that was
Yeah.
funny. All right,
Yeah.
now I'm going to move on
Yeah.
with my life because I didn't watch much television.
Yeah. I think it was like a sales call that he was going on, and he said it was safer to ride in the. It was. He said it was
Got it.
statistically safer to ride in the back seat than in the passenger seat, and then he did that. Yeah. So yeah, pretty sure it's season 2 that feels season 2 or 3ish. Yeah. But okay. So
I thought that was a funny scene. I enjoyed that.
yeah. Yeah, and I'm a fan. So, all right, so let's go. Green Bay, Dallas is the
Yep.
first Sunday matchup, first of 3 matchups.
No,
we got,
actually, that's after the Bills game. That's the middle
sorry,
matchup.
second of 3 games. Sorry, we already discussed the first one.
Yep. It's
Second
weird
of
that
3.
they have all 3 AFC games and then all 3 NFC games.
Yeah.
So, like, I wonder what their plan is for the following weekend. Are we going to have 2 AFC games on Saturday and 2 NFC games on Sunday? Because you have to have 1 NFC game on Sunday. Otherwise, the Eagles are playing on a Monday and a Saturday.
Yeah.
So, like, that game has to be on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think they have to have a 5 versus 4 matchup always on Monday if they're going to continue with this, just because of the
Because they have to know
logistics
where the team's going before the game is played.
Yeah, so that's and that holds up everything else if you don't do 5 versus 4. So, all right, so yeah, that is weird. I didn't notice that, but yeah, good observation.
Yep. So Green Bay versus Dallas, we've not yet seen a 7 beat a 2 in the NFL. Now, it could theoretically happen 3 hours earlier. We could see Pittsburgh beat Buffalo. But, like, this is, so far, in my opinion, the best chance we've had yet of seeing a 7 over a 2. Green Bay's offense has been pretty good. Like, their defense has obviously had some issues. They gave 30 points to a Panthers squad. They got shut out in the next 2 games against Jacksonville and Tampa Bay. Dallas on defense, they've got a lot of team speed. And the trade-off for that is they don't have necessarily as much power as some other teams, so they can be a little softer against the run than you might expect. But they're still a strong defense. They're good against the pass, solid pass rush, good coverage. And they've been very, very particularly strong at home. So we might see Green Bay attempt to try and control this game on the ground with Aaron Jones, run the ball. But my expectation is that Green Bay's defense is going to break down and that Love is going to get drawn into a shootout with Dak and eventually turn the ball over. Dallas's defense, obviously, they've lost Diggs, but with Bland and whatever else, they still have the philosophy of trading some big plays for some interceptions. And I do expect them to turn Love over. Full disclosure confession, I didn't touch this game on the side. I feel like the market and I mostly agreed on this one, save for the fact that I have Dallas and Green Bay. These are 2 teams. This is the 2-7 matchup where these are both teams that I think are a little better than the market thinks, and I would have backed them had they not been playing each other. So it's the opposite of the Kansas City Miami game, save for the fact that other game I did still have a strong opinion, and this one I just don't. LA Detroit.
Right.
I want to thank the universe for 2 things. 1 is giving up Stafford versus Goff, and 2, putting the game in Detroit. This is Matthew Stafford's first playoff game in Detroit, which is amazing to me.
That's like
So many years.
It's mind blowing that it's a road game. It's just it's almost poetic in a way.
Yep. And this is another game, by the way, where I think I like both of these teams more than the general market does, but they're playing each other. So what can you do? Although, I mean, if I have that feeling about the 3, 6, and the 2 and the 7 in a conference, then I guess like whatever. There weren't going to be too many outs for me. So this game is a little more even. So you have Stafford, you have Cooper Kupp, you have the revelation that was Puka Nacua. I just murdered that name, but you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
And so this is going to be a tough passing game for Detroit to stop. Detroit generally leans on zones in such situation, and Kupp is a pretty good zone buster. So it's going to be fun to watch the Rams offense against the Lions defense. In terms of Detroit, I mean, Sam Laporta is done with a knee injury. Even if he plays, I can't expect him to be 100%. And I trust Stafford more than I trust Goff. But Detroit's been the better team over the course of the season. I think they have a better overall roster. They're at home. I am on the Rams a little bit because I do think this game is close. I have Detroit as a small favorite. The same way I have like Cleveland as a small favorite, but smaller than the market pricing.
Sure.
I had the Rams as a small underdog, but closer again than the market. So I ended up on them. One thing. Amon-Ra St. Ra is really good, and it's going to be fun watching him against the Rams defense. I think for the Rams to win this game, Aaron Donald has been very good this season. He's still an excellent player, but he hasn't been necessarily as dominant as he's been in years past. If he can bring back that old level of dominance for one day only, that'd be impressive, and that would make a difference. So we shall see. And finally, we have Philly versus Tampa, where we have two NFC teams. Obviously, they're considered the weakest teams in the NFC, but I have them again even lower than the market does. But they're playing each other. What can you do? I actually ended up on the Eagles this game because, as bad as they are, I think Tampa is pretty terrible. Are we having technical difficulties?
I'm here. Sorry, I was just letting you do your thing.
Oh yeah,
I'm
sure.
good.
I just heard a couple beeps on the phone, so.
I'm good. I'm just letting you do your thing. I'm good.
Okay, no worries. Thank you kindly.
Yep.
But I'm on the Eagles, even though I think they are very bad, or at least they are not what they were. But this is one of those NFC South. Yes, I believe they have a winning record, but they're still terrible. I think the Saints would have been a tougher opponent. I expect Mayfield again. He had decent numbers. I don't think he's 100%. I do expect the Eagles to survive and advance for 1 week only. Again, this is one of those games where whoever wins this game, I expect to be fading in the divisional round, just like with Kansas City and Miami.
Yeah, now to say Mayfield's had a weird ass career.
He has.
As far as last year his moment was a Thursday night game. They scored 2 touchdowns late, and when he was with the Rams, but he was also with the Panthers earlier in the year. I'm losing. He's almost turning into the new version of Fitzpatrick, where he's going to end up with 10 different teams.
He's had some journeymen in him.
It's there's something to be said about those kind of guys that can just stick around and still put up numbers and still be productive. It's regardless of what Tampa does on Monday.
I mean, they won the division. They made the playoffs.
Yeah,
that was one of their goals from the start of the season. Good for them. One thing I should note is Mayfield has played through a lot of, not just played through a lot of pain in his career.
Yeah,
and he hasn't necessarily received much reward for it, and that's life in the NFL.
Yeah.
But he has earned my respect.
Yeah,
not necessarily what he really cared about. But I respect him.
He's fun. He's fun to watch too. So
yeah.
I don't know. Yeah. So we'll see. That's like I'm as far as like if I did like out of all the games, that's probably the game that I'm like least excited about. Um,
There's probably a
but but
reason it was banished to the Monday Night Football spot of shame.
but
Like
you know,
that's worse than the Saturday 4 o'clock.
but I'm still gonna watch it. So yeah.
Yeah.
So okay. So as far as betting futures, what are our rooted? What are our when I say our, I mean yours because I don't have any.
Arr.
But what are
So
our what are
so
your rooting
there's
interests?
two things. There's the futures from before the season and the stuff
Okay.
I start picking up near later in the season. One thing I actually forgot to mention from my notes. One possibility for the Tampa Bay to pull out the upset is do what the Giants did and blitz the shit out of Hurts. He kind of struggled against that last week. Perhaps it's a repeatable trick. Now, um, to answer the question of the futures, so in the preseason, I went heavy on the Eagles, significantly less heavy on the 49ers. I had just a little bit of them, moderate on the Chiefs, and very, very light on the Ravens, just a tiny bit.
Okay.
Um, and then during the season, later in the season, after the 49ers beat the Eagles, at that point, while I was still hoping that the Eagles get the 1 seed, my expectation was that the 49ers would, that the Eagles would lose another game, and that the 49ers would have the tiebreaker and get the 1 seed. Turns out it didn't really come down to the tiebreaker. But anyway,
Yeah.
I picked up a lot of 49ers at that point, and from the Ravens as well during the season, after they became the favorite to be on the 1 seed. So you might remember in the season, there was one point, amazingly enough, that like there were 4 teams in the AFC: the Dolphins, the Ravens, the Jaguars of all teams, and the Chiefs all had like within like between 20 and 30% chance of getting the 1 seed. It's kind of
Yeah.
weird. And then it just went the Ravens' way, and at that point I jumped on them. And part of that is I feel that the 1 seed is undervalued in the futures markets, like having the buy and home field advantage um, is undervalued at that point, particularly when the fields hasn't been set and it's not certain. And so I felt like I got good prices at that point on the 49ers and Ravens. And well, they luckily both did get those 1 seeds. And so obviously prices, I got good prices relative to what available now. But again, I took some risk that they would not be the ones. So those are the teams I'm on. I am rooting particularly for the Eagles, and if not the Eagles, the 49ers. And between the Ravens and the Chiefs, it's actually kind of balanced at this point, and I'm going to be fading the Chiefs anyway. So let's go Ravens, let's go 49ers, let's go Eagles, financially.
Okay. All right. Well, let's go into the other listener questions. We had, this is the classic Fat Music 14 question about this year's Josh Rosen. Josh Rosen, please.
Now, when you saw the question, did you know if you meant 2023, 24? Because I wasn't sure.
Yeah, he didn't specify, so I guess you could just kind of leave that open to interpretation.
Okay. So for 2023, it's Bryce Young. This year, Rosen went first overall, which is a brutal situation.
Yeah.
Bryce was just such a massive disappointment. Like, there were obviously concerns about his arm strength coming out of Alabama, but it's been more than that. He's looked overmatched and he hasn't made much progress. And again, it's particularly painful when you have CJ Stroud on the other side, who's just lighting the world on fire, making the playoffs, hosting a playoff game.
Yeah.
And you're giving away the first overall pick back to the Bears. And well, you personally should very much enjoy that. The Panthers should not.
Yeah.
That is my pick for the 2023 Josh Rosen Award. Now for 2024, I have not yet had my chance to analyze the draft class. I know there's going to be some suspicions that Michael Penix, out of Washington, is more of a college guy and isn't going to really have some level of success in the pros. We shall see. Obviously, my numbers will be out in April, as they are every year.
Maybe
I'll let you know then what I think.
Maybe Daniels from LSU. I know that
Could be Daniels from LSU.
I mean, I know he's climbing up, but yeah, it's hard to say.
He's climbed up quite a bit. He's right now expected to be quarterback 3, quarterback 2 who's Drake May, and then the Caleb Williams. And Greg Gabriel has already been asking questions about Williams, so maybe it'll be Williams. Maybe 2 years in a row, the number one pick is a problem.
Sure.
I don't know. We'll see.
Yeah, and to be fair to Bryce Young, I mean Richardson was looking better than Young before he got hurt, so I don't think people were thinking Richardson would be the answer here, but Richardson, Anthony Richardson, would
So,
be
like with Richardson, from what I saw of him, I thought was fairly positive. I have a lot of faith that if he can stay healthy, he's a potential franchise quarterback, which
okay.
is what they're hoping for. And I still have that hope and faith that it can come to pass. We'll see.
Okay. All right. So my buddy here, Joseph Quino, is asking about um, playoff games in terms of being more markets being more or less beatable. He was saying, as a rec better, I have far more success overall in betting sides and totals in NFL playoff games versus the entire season. Do you have any insight to these markets being any more beatable versus typical regular season games, or easier to find quantifiable edges?
So I don't have like a narrative handy that suggests that playoff games, aka highly liquid markets, would be more beatable than regular season games. The only thing I could think of is that the incentives are clear, which removes a bit of variance that you might see in a regular season game. It's just win, baby.
Yep.
But while I have this question on the line, I want to say, as I do, I will attack playoff openers. I understand the ones will go up, and that's fine. I also don't necessarily expect the markets will always agree with me. So I figure I can get in early, and if the line moves against me, then I could always bet more. And if the line moves with me, well, I got the best price I was ever going to get. Like that's the full Kelly life. But then I have more time to do research into the games over the course of the week, and I will say that the Cleveland Houston game, like initially I had that. I actually held that really, really close to 50-50. And then after doing more analysis, I moved more towards Cleveland, not enough to fold and go on the other side
Yeah.
per se, but I became less confident in my initial position. So it's one of those things where in the playoffs, there's fewer games and there's going to be more analysis done on them, not just by me, by everyone.
Yeah.
And so that could be kind of thing where for some reason that could be helpful to your friend in some ways that I wouldn't necessarily be able to necessarily point out here, but it's the kind of thing where he could, through osmosis or through some analysis, or whatever else, um, figure out more and have fewer distractions.
Okay. All right. The next question from Paulie Podol, or Paul Erickson. He was asking if it's not giving anything away, teams that rest the final week of the regular season because their playoff position is set in stone, and they typically play similar to their season baseline in their first game, first quarter, first half, first game, full game. You have an answer to this?
So there's the issue that the regular season baseline is kind of tricky in that teams change quite a bit over the course of the season. So I guess I kind of assume he's referring to how good we thought they were before they rested their starters.
Yeah.
So, and I don't punish teams at all for that. Like if you have a team like the Ravens who rested their starters week 18, and then they're coming off a bye, and then in their first round game, whoever to get, maybe against Houston, maybe against Cleveland, whoever else, I'm not going to punish them. I would not modify my first quarter line. I would not modify my first half line. I view rest as being a helpful thing. Get healthy, and I'm less concerned about rust. So,
Okay.
no, I do not personally punish them for this, and I don't have any analysis. And obviously, we remember teams who rest their starters and then lose. But like we also should remember teams that play their starters and lose, because just big upsets are memorable. The Jaguars upset the mighty
Oh
Broncos one
yeah,
year.
that was like over 2 touchdown favorites, I think.
Yeah, these things
Yeah.
can happen,
Jaguars
and I
second year in
wouldn't
the league.
blame
Yeah.
rust.
Yeah.
It's just football is a funny game and shit happens.
Yeah.
There's a lot of teams that rest their starters and then ship it, and they go all the way. So like, no, I'm not. I do not view rest as a bad thing that I would punish in the marketplace.
Because and when you think about it, like if it wasn't an advantage, I don't think the NFL would give those teams a week off for for winning.
I know that teams, if you give them a choice between having a bye and not having a bye, they're going to take the bye.
I mean, like if you give me a chance to have my team not be eliminated this weekend, I'm going to take that. So yeah, like if you wanted to design a playoff system where the Niners are already in the championship game of the NFC, yeah, I'm okay with that. Like I don't agree with that, but I'm saying like
I don't
yeah,
think it's necessarily fair, but
but no,
sure. If
but
we
you
could
know
have,
what I mean. Like, but you know what I mean. Like, I'll take that. I'll take the chance to have less games to lose to win the title than you know have to go 3-0 versus 4-0. I'd rather take the 3-0. So
yes,
less
as
chances
well
of,
you should.
less chances of fucking up. So
Yep.
So okay. So the question about the wacky awards market, yeah, I'll answer that. Yeah, you don't handicap them, so
I don't. I'm sorry.
yeah. So yeah, I just bringing that up. And then the last question, I oh, it was Griffin Haddon asking about what I'm going to be wearing during the Niners games, and this is kind of a proud point, and it was kind of merging into the end of the last podcast here, but I'm putting on my Jerry Rice, and I'm actually putting it on backwards, but I'm just gonna go with it. Whatever. 49ers jersey. It's definitely backwards. So this is not how I'll be wearing it, but this is a jersey that I wore in high school. And I just am able to fit into it again. So I'm really happy with that. So I'll probably be
Mazel
wearing
tov.
this. Um,
Well done, my man.
yeah. So yeah, so just that was another thing. I was going to ask you if you like our last podcast ended with health talk, and if I think you had just bought a treadmill. Are you using
Yeah,
that treadmill?
and that is good. I've been trying to get outside more because like just being inside I view as less good than being outside. So like last night I just went on a walk for a while,
Okay.
and that was nice. I do enjoy walking, and just walking to new places, and yeah, I take advantage of the treadmill when I can't really get outside,
Okay.
but it has shown me like yes, if this is the exercise you want to do, if you can be outside, like, and I have the big yellow jacket, I have
Yeah.
the parka, so yeah,
Yeah.
walking outside I view as a good thing, and also yeah, exercise is good,
Yeah.
staying healthy, my man.
Good. Yeah. I am. Yeah. This morning I weighed myself and it was 198, which is the lowest weight I've been at in quite some time. I was like 3 or 4 weeks ago. I posted something on Twitter about breaking under 200. So, um, yeah, it's been fun. That's been the best thing about this past 6 months for me is
A man,
getting back.
fist bump emoji. I am very happy for you.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, it's like and I'm certainly no expert in health or whatever, but people have asked me like what thinking that I'm some kind of expert, but I'm not. But just one thing I could tell people is just even if you could just walk around your block, that's how it started for me. So just if you get outside and walk around your block, if you're physically capable of doing it, then do it.
Yeah.
Just do something small to start and see where it goes. Because I was like 260 or 265 probably in May. So to be down to 198 right now is
January, that's 8 months.
crazy. So yeah,
That's 8 pounds a month, my man.
yeah. And it was actually like down to like probably 210 back in like early November. So, or yeah. So it's been a little slower, but since then. But yeah, but yeah, I joined a gym a couple months ago. My company pays for it if I go to the gym 8 times in the month. So it's basically free rolling, my company. So I'll take
No,
advantage of
good
that.
for you. I mean, I think
Um,
everyone's happy about this. You stay
so
healthy, you stay on the
so
job.
yeah. So it benefits
Keep-
everybody. It benefits everybody in my life to be healthy. It's
Yes, I agree.
like that's the way I look at it. So, did you want to go over these last topics here? I know we're
So
really long on
there's
time
just
here.
some very,
Um,
very short notes
okay.
that I put in. We've already talked about the division round. One thing I want to mention this year is the AFC game is going to be the early game again this year. So that's going to be nice, I think, with Baltimore on the East Coast and San Francisco on the West Coast. They'll both be, I want to say, roughly 3 o'clock and then at 3:30 roughly start times. So I think that's good. I would prefer that to say like a San Francisco game starting noon locally,
Yeah.
and then a Baltimore game starting 6:30 on the East Coast for the AFC game, since it alternates year to year. It's not about coast or anything.
Yeah.
So I think they just got lucky this year
Yeah.
with the East Coast being early and the West Coast being late. And then we got Vegas, baby. Vegas.
Nice. And yeah, like I think you've gone to games in previous years. Are you looking to go to
I
any?
have. I'm not going to any game this weekend. I may go up to Buffalo next weekend.
Okay.
Um,
Buffalo,
like
KC, maybe.
there's nothing that I'd really want to drive to. I also might theoretically take the train down to Baltimore. I'll either probably take the train down to Baltimore or fly to Buffalo, but nothing this weekend.
Okay,
This weekend I am watching at home, watching on television. Next weekend I'm going to try to go to a game.
so Buffalo is a flight situation, not a drive situation.
Yeah, that is a long ass drive. It's not so
Okay.
much even the drive there; it's a long ass drive back.
Okay,
So
fair.
I'd rather fly there, and also I'm going to pimp a hotel there. There's the Mansion on Delaware Avenue, a truly wonderful place to stay. Highly recommend. And so yeah, that would be my plan if that's end up what I do next weekend. But first let's see who's even in the games,
Sure.
and then I'll decide.
All right. Well, that sounds yeah. So all right. Well, let's do this thing. I'm excited for tomorrow, and
Yeah.
you know I'm the weather is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to this whole weekend. This is one of my favorite weekends. And Seth, I'm glad to have you on as always. I'm looking forward to
It's an honor to be here. Thank you, Brian.
the draft podcast and everything else. But I'm glad that we're able to do this every year, 3 times, and you know, especially this time of the year is always fun. So thank you, Seth. Thank you, everyone, for listening. And yeah, if you have any questions about anything, just let us know. But yeah, I'm just glad to be doing this, and thank you, everyone, for listening. And we'll talk to you soon.
Thank you, Brian.
All right, take care.
You too.